Well, everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of Jen and Jake's Bizarre Fray, where each bi-weekly chapter of this saga, we recommend stuff to each other, stuff that we love, stuff that we hate, stuff that'll get a primal reaction out of us, and we see who's better at knowing the other person deep in their soul. And today, we're talking about such a wide array of things that I only saw fit to start off with a complete non sequitur. Because, Jen, I want to ask you something very important.
All right.
You're stranded on a desert island. I want your desert island media for every main artistic field that you are interested in. I want an album, I want a movie, I want a show, I want a game. What are they?
Ooh, fuck. Okay. Game is probably gonna be the PS4 Spider-Man, just because I've played that shit.
Ooh.
Probably my most replayed game ever is PS4 Spider-Man. In fact, I'm playing it again right now for a project that I'm working on. And so
Everybody's got to
that
have that one open world game, that one that just scratches that itch.
it scratches that itch for me. Absolutely. Album. Ooh boy.
That's a tough
Oof.
one.
If I can be a little cheeky about it, I would probably do one of those like the greatest XYZ artist albums so that I could do because the first time I ever listened to Johnny Cash was on that the greatest or the essential Johnny Cash
Yeah, that's
album
how
that
I
had
heard
so
Michael
much.
Jackson and Bruce Springsteen, I think.
There's a lot of those like essential so and so records that all have like the black and white and the different colors for the each person. And that one for Johnny Cash was how I got into his music was I bought that on iTunes and so I would listen to it all the fucking time. So
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
being a little bit pithy, but I think that's gonna be mine. Movie.
That's a tough one too.
I think it would be probably something John Carpenter.
Oh.
Possibly either Christine, which is like my like Southpaw favorite John Carpenter,
We've got
or
a first watch episode coming out about Christine, so stay tuned for that. I did recently rewatch that as well. That's a good ass movie. Like people, that's an underrated
underrated
Carpenter for
among
sure.
his filmography. Absolutely. It's in my like top five Carpenter, maybe even top three.
It's up there for me too.
But I think it's gonna be The Exorcist 3, just because
Yes!
there was a
I
year where I
forget that
watched
you're
that
another
movie.
one of my friends who rides insanely hard for Exorcist 3, which is one of the coolest things anyone can do, if you ask me. That
There was
movie
a year
fucks.
where the first time I watched that movie, I spent the rest of that whole year watching that movie over and over again, pretty
Have I told you
consistently.
have I told you about when I took my acting class in high school or not high school, in college for my degree when I did an acting class, we had to do a monologue and I did the Brad Dorff, "He is inside with us. He
Can I tell
will
you something
never get away."
insane?
And I scared the piss out of a bunch of people who did nothing but the fucking coffee is for closers speech from
Can I
Glengarry
tell
Glen
you something
Ross.
insane?
Please.
I took an acting class in 2020 right before the pandemic hit and did the exact same fucking thing.
Holy fuck! Bro, what the shit?
Shout out to my acting teacher, Casey Cole, who is in Chris Stuckman's movie that comes out this weekend.
Oh,
So
nifty.
hell yeah, fucking right.
I hope that we can see Shelby Oaks, and I hope that we can have a lot of good things to say about it, just because
I know I
I
want to
watched that
do our
video
next
he put
premium
out
episode.
recently.
If we both get to Shelby Oaks this weekend, our next premium episode is probably going to be us talking about Shelby Oaks.
Definitely. I really like Stuckman's one of those guys who I've been watching since like the very beginning of YouTube, and like I haven't really paid close attention to his reviews in the past couple of years just because that's not really what I pay attention to on YouTube anymore, but like he's a cool guy. I mean, I say this not knowing him and hoping that he's not secretly some weird piece of shit, but like he's got a great story and I'm really like it's just cool to see, literally somebody who came from where we are and now they're fucking working in a movie with Keith David.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Did I miss one? I did the album, I did the movie, I did the video game. What else?
Show.
Show? Ooh, what show would I take me on the desert island? Probably the Andy Griffith Show. Just because that's been my
God.
comfort food for as long as I can remember has been the Andy Griffith Show. So what are yours? What are yours? Let's get into yours.
Well, with movie, it's the easiest because it's a boring pick because it's Little Women, which is my favorite movie, but it's also like that is my favorite movie and my go-to comfort movie. It's also kind of like it's long, it's sprawling, it's expansive, it's just like all the things that I look for are just there. And if it wasn't that, and if I couldn't pick my favorite movie, I would say Castle in the Sky or Kiki's Delivery Service, one of the two. I gotta go
Miyazaki's a good pull
Miyazaki.
for a desert island
Right.
movie.
I figured, like, you got to go with something that's just top of the line, visually speaking. Album wise, that's tough too. I'm gonna say Nebraska. My favorite Bruce Springsteen
Yeah.
album, one of my five favorite albums, and he's my favorite solo artist, so that's just kind of, I'm spiritually aligned with that record. I listened to that album basically every single day for almost 2.5 months last year when I was really going through some shit. And so I'm joined at the hip spiritually with that record. I'll never get tired of it no matter what.
Hmm.
And I could go with a higher favorite, like, but the thing is that the albums above that in my top 10 are like Punisher, The Last Frightened Rabbit album, Death Consciousness. Like I don't need to be that depressed on the
You
desert
don't need to be
island.
alone with that.
Yeah, like Nebraska's like kind of sad, but there's a depth to it that's a little bit, it runs deeper. But show wise is really fucking tough. I mean, a part of me like Cowboy Bebop's kind of a certainly a high candidate, but and again, I feel bad potentially saying Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because it's like, duh, of course, but also like I mean, come on. Like, come on. If I can't pick, if I'll challenge myself and not pick an anime, and I'll say something that veers closer to comfort. King of the Hill, maybe. I think that might be a good one.
Oh,
King of the Hill.
yes.
And it's
I don't know
long
why I
and never
didn't think
dips
of
in
that.
quality. Like, that's one of those shows where it's like, nah, it doesn't matter what season. It's all good. So who gives a shit? Game? That's rough. That's really rough. I think to help me pass the time, I would have to say Persona 3. Persona 3 Reload, just because those are the games that I played to help me get through like high school and shit when I was socially maladjusted, and that makes you like compartmentalize and schedule. Like I would be missing that. I need something to emulate life, basically. So it's just like, yeah, take the RPG dating sim. Why not? Cool.
You
That'll
need
work, I guess.
you need a piece of desert islands media that will keep you thinking about logistics and schedules.
Listen, it's a little Orwellian, but you know what? Nowadays, what the fuck isn't? Well, I mean, for one, music, that's not super Orwellian. Music like, okay,
Music like D'Angelo.
we music like
Music.
D'Angelo. We're doing something a little different for our album reviews this week, in that we are reviewing one new record. Technically speaking, it's a posthumous album, the posthumous Mobb Deep album, Infinite, and we are also talking about D'Angelo's sort of seminal record, Voodoo. And we're doing this mainly because, yeah, Infinite was on, the slate as a new album, but it's really more just to honor two artists who have passed far, far before their time. And, I have a pretty deep connection to both of them as far as I'm concerned. So we just sort of wanted to talk about that just because it seemed like the most interesting path to tread. So D'Angelo's Voodoo. This is such a strange album to just be like, yeah, let's just talk about it, because in many respects, this is the OK computer of neo soul. Like, and that's not like a buzz phrase that I came up with. That's what D'Angelo's label marketed Voodoo as, so that people would be able to put it on the shelf. They were talking about it and they were just like, it's kind of like that record and it's going to be that successful. And it kind of wasn't. But D'Angelo is a neo soul artist who came onto the scene by doing a lot of like soundtrack work in his early days, and writing behind the scenes and stuff. He kind of worked in the industry beforehand and then became this kind of prince-like figure, this sort of polymath who could play a litany of different instruments, who could sing, who had a history in singing in the gospel choir in his church, and then made the right connections and ultimately sort of integrated himself into a scene that I'm forgetting the name of, but is a very distinct scene that involves basically all of the sort of hip hop and neo soul legionnaires at the time of people who were in A Tribe Called Quest. Erica Badu is another one. Questlove is another one, a name we'll probably mention a couple of times when talking about this. Common, Mos Def. Basically, like, the godfathers of neo soul and conscious hip hop, for example. And
Is
as he
that the
integrated
the
himself,
Soulquarians?
Soulquarians, yes, that's what
Yeah.
it's called. And though, I mean, like, that scene produced things like Erica Badu's Baduism, Mos Def's, or no, wait, it's Common's like Water for Chocolate. Mos Def was another person who was affiliated with these people, but this scene was such a big, fundamental sort of building block for black music at the time, which this is also when, people like Biggie and Tupac were on the scene and they were, commercially dominant in hip hop. And this was a little bit, it was a little bit to the left, it was a little bit less commercially successful
Yeah,
in the
to put some
grand scheme
context
of
to this,
things.
the first Soulquarians record is
Hmm.
technically Things Fall Apart, the Roots
Hmm.
record,
The
which
Roots,
is
yeah.
way more like left-leaning for them in their discography.
For sure, for sure. So, like, D'Angelo was brought up with these people and in many respects worked with a lot of them. Lauryn Hill, another person that D'Angelo worked with and is memorably featured on one of the songs on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. But Brown Sugar was D'Angelo's debut album, and that record did really well. Lots of really beloved singles, and also just a great album in its own right. D'Angelo kind of bringing to the table this very simple soul sound, but something that was very warm, very crisp, live band feel. And D'Angelo, other than having a great singing voice and being a multi-talented instrumentalist, was also a phenomenal lyricist and writer and storyteller. There are songs on that album like Shit Damn Motherfucker that are like full on stories, narrative progressions. And Voodoo is the album that sort of it kind of began as a couple of songs that were made irrespective of the album experience. And then eventually it kind of all molded together. And we have Voodoo as a kind of culmination of a lot of the Soulquarian community that just sort of built together. And this album is, man, I sort of got into this whole scene. Like, I really wanted to get into R&B and funk last year because that was two big blind spots for me, musically speaking. Like, it was all kicked off by the fact that I listened to what is one of my favorite albums ever now, which is Kalela's Take Me Apart. And I was like, I need more R&B in my life. Like, why the fuck have I been denying myself this unbelievable pleasure? So I need to seek this out. And I remember going to D'Angelo and like I liked Brown Sugar and I'd heard Black Messiah a while ago and really liked it, but I was just like, yeah, for some reason I skipped the big one, the big artistic statement of his. And I finally got around to it. And man, I was so fucking captivated by this immediately last year. And it's sort of been like, I think I've gone back to songs like Untitled, How Does It Feel over and over and over again. And naturally, we recently got the news that D'Angelo had been battling with, I think, was it pancreatic cancer?
Hmm.
Pan One of the worst forms of cancer, as far as I can tell, in a private battle that he went through and recently passed. And it was a good excuse to talk about this. So I guess, Jen, were you at all familiar with D'Angelo's stuff before all of this? Was this new for you at all?
So yeah, as usual, I'm coming into this pretty much completely blind as far as D'Angelo's discography. I mean, I've listened to Miseducation, so I've heard D'Angelo's, voice on tape before, and I've heard How Does It Feel before because it's a huge, gigantic hit and everybody loves it. But this is my first time with a D'Angelo album. And so this being in keeping with the Soulquarians stuff, I immediately found its kind of unkempt structure very captivating. It's one of my favorite things about like Things Fall Apart, right? Is that album is
Yeah.
so kind of structurally all over the place in terms of the kinds of songs that the band will move into from one track to the next. And this has a pretty similar approach too, where like Playa, this is a 7 minute intro,
Hmm.
but it's great because it sets up the very jammy, very groovy approach that most of the album is going to take. Where, yeah, you do have your hits like How Does It Feel, which I mean is also a long song, but then you have
Hmm.
songs like Devil's Pie, which was the first single, and how like your conventional R&B album should start with a song like Devil's Pie, but it being Second, well, one, it was still in the days of marketing where, your first big single, no matter what it was always you put it on the second track when you're ready to release the album, just because that
Hmm.
track two appeal is the thing that people thought would work and still does in a lot of respects. Just going through this track list, it's just a very groovy album. It's very loose.
Yeah.
Very unkempt. And I don't know, I find this difficult to describe because I've had this happen a lot this week actually for different reasons, but I've just been having so many like first time experiences with new things where I'm like, how do you put into words the feeling that you're experiencing something just kind of perfect for the first time right before
Yep.
your eyes? And
Hmm.
that's what listening to this album feels like to me, where I'm just like, oh, yeah, everything about this is perfect. And I see the vision so clearly, immediately, of let's make an album all about the groove, about the vibe. This feels like a live album in the same way that I've said
Hmm.
this about other albums before, but just because of the way that it's organized and the way that it's put together, it's got a very live, spontaneous feel to it that lends itself well to obviously what you would hear on like a great live album. But there's a lot of, precise musical movements here as well. I just wrote down this one line from Left and Right, young Miss Fillet of Fish. Like, for example, the vocalizing on the opening of the song, The Line.
Oh, I
Like this
love this.
album is all about the little tiny minutia contributions of all these different musicians kind of coming together to lift D'Angelo's profile. And moments like that on the line or the instrumental build with the horn and the drum and bass on Send It On, all of the tone of the instrumentation that lets you get the kind of like sweet spots begging to get back together narrative that you get on One Mo Again, right? There's so much careful arrangement of sonic elements to bring these kind of emotional realities of these songs to life. And so I really, really, really enjoyed like getting into the nitty gritty of a lot of these songs. But I really do think my favorite moment on this was The Root. I
That's a
love this
great one.
song so
That's a
fucking
great
much.
one.
I love it so much. Just like the way that he talks about being so vulnerable, right? Because
Hmm.
that was the thing that I wasn't sure how to approach this album with, is because I knew something about D'Angelo was that he kind of changed his image around the time that this album was coming out.
Hmm.
He was really working on his body because they wanted to like make him a sex symbol,
Yep.
basically. Was a big
100%.
element of the marketing strategy for this and the How Does It Feel video, which there's way more criticism about that out there than you can find. That the How Does It Feel video is kind of the epitome of that extension of his image, but it's one that ended up like really hurting his mental health from what I can understand.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he had
he
a really
was.
hard time after this album came out reckoning with this kind of new image that had been constructed around him.
I don't know if it's a verified story, but there is like a story that circulated that when he would go out and perform live for people, like there was one incident that, again, this is not exactly something that I know is substantiated. There was a woman who supposedly tossed money at D'Angelo, wanting him to remove his clothing. As I think
Mm.
in Mike the Snare's video on D'Angelo, he makes a joke at the point when discussing this. It's like, the famously very complimentary act of tossing money at someone to take their clothes off, something that is very respectful and that everyone should interpret very positively. D'Angelo follows in line with a lot of a kind of really tragic legacy of black male entertainers who reach this zenith of popularity that just completely kind of implodes beyond their control, and then the way that they're seen and viewed by the public at large just completely fucks with them. Like, I think of people like Dave Chappelle, who was just like, I literally need to get out of this fucking country because I'm being driven insane by how ubiquitous my presence is. And it's like D'Angelo kind of had that going on where he was sexualized so much. And I mean, like, and it's, you take a look at the cover of Voodoo, and it's like, yeah, D'Angelo's like one of the most beautiful looking people I've ever seen in my life. Like, it only makes sense that a label would want to try and pimp him out like that. And it's really unfortunate that that played out the way it did and kind of kept him as being really reclusive. Like, the years of his life after Voodoo were really, really rough for him. Like, he had like a DUI, he struggled with drug use, a friend of his had passed away. Like, just a guy who was struggling with a lot of problems. And when you go and listen to Voodoo, it's like this is an album that is meant for comfort. This is sonic luxuriating. Like when I listen to this album, it's like you hear it and it's very minimal. Like compositionally,
Mm.
like there is like it's all live band. Like it's very, it's the Roots, Questlove kind of warm, rich instrumentation, but it's also about space. It's also about dynamism. It lets you really sit with every instrumental choice, every sort of riff, every little tiny detail, and it lets you immerse yourself in it and kind of ponder its musical purpose as you go along. It's an album that you're meant to sink into. It's not necessarily like, and I kind of feel like that's R&B in general, is that it's a genre that's way more about atmosphere and it's way more about what really specific choices mean. And on like the opening on like Playa Playa, the sort of watery kind of bass hit, that sound is just it's so emblematic of this album. Do you want to know something, Jen, about this song?
Yeah, I
Playa
do.
Playa. This song has a lot of basketball jokes in it. Would you like to know why?
Yeah, why does it have a lot of basketball jokes in it?
Because this song was almost on the Space Jam soundtrack. That's real. That's real. D'Angelo did do a song for Space Jam that isn't this, by the way. That finding that out was very strange as someone who did not grow up with that movie. But that being said, they showed this to the people who assembled the Space Jam soundtrack, and they were literally like, "This is fucking whack, dude. We can't put this on the album." And I mean, like, on the one hand, how dare you? On the other hand, yeah, this what the fuck would this song be doing on a movie soundtrack? Like this is a song that is meant to again, you luxuriate in it, you immerse yourself in it, and it leads you in like it's this really really steady progression. And like D'Angelo's voice on here is used in a way that it kind of it sort of takes a bit of a left turn from how it was used on Brown Sugar, which is a little bit more traditional. Whereas here, it's like the kind of yelpier Prince-like delivery is something he
Yeah, he's
leans
using a lot more of
into.
that falsetto.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of it's a bit wirier. Like it's no less impressive or even like beautiful sounding, but it is a distinct choice that I feel is done with intent because so much of this album is about low end and D'Angelo makes his voice the entire high end. So basically like it's all about these really specific clashing contrasts. And I think the one thing about Voodoo that impressed me the most is that like I loved this album last year. I thought it was a masterpiece, and I came back to it again, and I was like, God damn, you're right. This shit is perfect. Like I can't even come up with something that I could theoretically label at this is because like this is an 80-minute long album, and you will know if you have paid any lick of attention to the criticism we level at albums on any show, on any year, whatever. Long albums are a difficult ask with me sometimes because they can just like, 90 CD bloat, not my favorite thing. It leads a lot of albums that are revered to as like classics of whatever genre they belong to. It does hold me at a bit of a distance sometimes when they are just so fucking long. This, on the other hand, don't take a single fucking song on this off this album.
No,
Don't do it.
this is perfect.
Yeah, there is, and the thing is that every single song has a new kind of groove, a new kind of energy to it, a new swing, but it also feels like an ever-evolving piece. It feels like this is a
Mm.
band that got in a room and just segued in and out of these songs in like one long session. It's not that, but it feels that way. I feel like that's really the touch of somebody like Questlove, who, Questlove and Jay Dilla were two figures who were just they were so influential on this sound in ways I think are sorely taken for granted. Like even though they're held up as like legends in their respective fields, their actual contributions go a little bit undersung. But like the drum patterns on here are just they're fucking tight. They're exquisite. And every single song here feels like it dwells within a distinct songwriting idea. You have a song like Devil's Pie, which is just broadly about the idea of temptation, broadly about the idea of sin, and just sort of like basking in an environment where you see different kinds of sin everywhere. And D'Angelo being brought up with his
Mm.
background, naturally, he's the type of person to clue himself into stuff like this. And songs like The Line are really interesting because, he's talking about like even like brandishing a weapon at one point, not because he, feels afraid for himself, but almost because he wants to have something to put on the line. He wants to feel the risk. He wants to feel like he has something that is worth putting on the line. And that's just, I mean, that's a really complicated sentiment to actually take root in. And even though there are lots of minimal moments on this, when this album goes for bigger swells, like on songs like Spanish Joint, which has this lovely Latin rhythm to it, and like his
Yeah.
voice is really kind of pronounced and bigger on this song, it's wonderful. And man, like I talk about sequencing choices in albums all the time, and I talk about like, some of the best 1-2 punches in any like and like normally the ending sort of space of a penultimate track and the ultimate track. So many great albums that I love do this kind of dynamic thing where they save their two biggest moments for last. See Illusory Walls as a great example of this
Mm.
phenomenon. And this is one of the OGs of this phenomenon because like putting Untitled and Africa at the end of your album, like balls of fucking brass to do something this indulgent, but also something that, like, no, they knew they hit a home run with both of these. Like, Untitled, How Does It Feel? Probably the most famous D'Angelo song that's not on Brown Sugar is like this is just one of the most beautiful soul songs ever. That melody, the steady, the how does it feel? Timeless, beautiful. And
Yeah.
then you listen to the lyrics that aren't that, this song is filthy. This entire album, as a matter of fact, when it talks about sex, it is talking about sex. And Untitled goes into some explicit detail, but that's the thing I love about it is that I mean it does have this beautiful sex positivity to it, which as
Yeah.
I have observed people talking about D'Angelo's passing, particularly some content creators I follow that are older black men, grew up with his music and seeing D'Angelo as a sex symbol, like his death hit people like them really hard because he was a guy whose existence proved to them that a black man could be a sex symbol. It was a sort of, projecting your own confidence that, you might not have as somebody who lives in the world that we do. And then you see somebody like him and you're just like, wow, maybe I can be like that too. Like maybe people can desire me. And that attitude on here is very, I mean, it's intimate. It's not necessarily like, yeah, it's dirty, but it's also like it's careful. D'Angelo on this is, whenever he's talking about sex, he is nothing short of a generous and incredibly thoughtful lover, which is why I love the final track on this so much, Africa, which is a dedication to his son, who had been recently born at the time. But it's like the whole album almost feels like it's this ode to the idea of intimacy and love and
Mm.
connection. And then it results in a new life at the very end, and you connect it back to your roots in Africa. It's like that's so brilliant. I'm speechless by this choice.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I love the ending of this album so much. I love Africa. I love How Does It Feel? Pretty much that whole run from the root to Africa and
Yeah.
that whole second half of this album feels like a big personal evolution from, the root being about being kind of stripped back and being vulnerable and being not passive, but feeling like the other person has the initiative, right? Go on my role in her play with no rehearsal, left my
Mm-hmm.
mojo, my favorite suit, that sort of thing. But then the closer that you get to How Does It Feel, he's taking more of a kind of active role in the intimacy, in the seduction, in all of it. And then by the time you get to Africa, you realize that this whole project is being dedicated to the way that he's able to love other people, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
his son or a lover or his community, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of voodoo as a concept is about putting love out towards something that you want to receive it.
Yeah, it's an album that feels so confident and breezy, and I wouldn't quite call it fun, but there is a levity to it that feels very relaxing when you listen
Yeah.
to it. It has a pulse to be certain, but it is something that just it feels comfy to listen to, and not in a way that like traditional like comfort music might. It actually does a good job of kind of riding the line between making you feel a little uncomfortable with just how intimate it can become, but also never making that too omnipresent, never making that too much of an intrusive force. And I mean, it's such a You said that there was a point on the album where he kind of focuses on being like vulnerable. And I feel like that's another aspect of D'Angelo's identity that was like so key to his success and why so many people love them is that he was obviously this kind of, like again, you look at the cover of Voodoo and it's like this is clearly a dude who takes very good care of himself from what it looks like and, embodies a kind of desirable masculinity, but on this album, he is very sensitive. He's very thoughtful. He's showing you that, masculinity does not have to be this inherently, domineering, violent thing. Like it is nuanced, it is careful, it is thoughtful. And, that's refreshing literally no matter what. Like that just makes this album age all the better. I can't say enough good things about D'Angelo's music, and I think it really it just fucking sucks. Like, I mean, I was gonna say this about Prodigy too, but like
Yeah.
this goes back to fucking losing MF Doom at the beginning of the decade, where it's just like, why are all of these incredibly successful, influential artists dying at 50? This is fucking like this fucking sucks, man. But it
Yeah.
does give us an excuse to talk about some of the most important music made in these genres, and it's music that like I feel like D'Angelo came from a space that was just very oriented around his community and successful within that community and because of that community. And it's why, white people who aren't into music are not, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him. Like, it's not necessarily the same connection that you can see. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, D'Angelo did music for lots of movies that were really popular within, certain sects of culture that us folk were never exposed to. So it feels a little bit alien, but in like a great way, in a way that, crosses thresholds and barriers. And that's what the best music is capable of doing, man. I
Yeah.
I I can't recommend listening to any of the three D'Angelo albums. Like just listen to all three of them. Like not just Voodoo. Like Voodoo is the best one in my opinion, but like not even by that much. Like Black Messiah is fucking great and weird and like D'Angelo's a funny writer too. Like I mean, again, there's a song called "Shit Damn Motherfucker" on the first album. Like this is not super serious or super like it is. These are very balanced experiences.
Yeah, I mean all the delivery of the basketball lines on Playa Playa is done in such a funny way because it's so laid back of like,
And we could
yeah,
have
I'm gonna
seen
get
Bugs
you because
Bunny
I'm
dancing to
so
it.
good. But it's like it's a different kind of confidence, right? Where you
Mhm.
don't need to like be full of swagger to
Mhm.
deliver the message of like, yeah, no, I'm gonna beat you.
Yeah. It's smooth, it's appealing, it's everything music like this really should be. And if you haven't acquainted yourself with R&B and soul music, D'Angelo's career feels like a tutorial for it. Like you see what the genre like is with Brown Sugar, you see how it evolves with Voodoo, and you see its incredible spanning versatility with Black Messiah and how, easily linked it is to something like hip hop. Like, and again, if you're
Mhm.
familiar with hip hop, there's a lot of that in here. You will find yourself at home in some respect, but like, don't let the runtime fool you or anything. This is an album that breezes by. This is 80 of the quickest minutes you will ever experience. And yeah, we had to give it up to D'Angelo. It
Yes,
sucks that we
I'm
lost
very
him.
glad we got to do this segment. Yeah, but it sucks that he's gone.
And on the note of losing people too early, of course, we're going to segue into the new release that we're going to talk about, which is the last album from Mobb Deep, Infinite. And this album is interesting because, yes, it is technically a posthumous album because RIP Prodigy, but this is an album that's been in the works for a little while, particularly under the sort of, tutelage of The Alchemist, who does most of the production on here. And I was a little teeny bit worried just because I'm always a little wary when it comes to posthumous records. We've talked about this a lot in the
Hmm.
past. In fact, we talked about this, technically speaking, on our last episode where we talked about the new Cardiacs album, which is a posthumous record. And in fact, kind of the same way that this is a posthumous album, and that like members of the band were still around and in the room, and producers who would work with them before had kind of brought that to life. But this is a little bit different, but it is kind of piecemeal assembled from, bits of, Prodigy's verses and what have you, and assembled into a final product. And I was like, Are we going to get something that feels like it's solid but doesn't have, with posthumous albums, even the best of them, they don't always quite hold together in the way that you want a deliberate album statement to do that. And I won't get into what I think in regards to that. I will just say this. The Alchemist is somebody I'm very on and off with. There are some albums where I love the work he does. There are some albums where I find it a little lackluster. And so fingers crossed. As far as I'm concerned, The Alchemist is the star of this album. And I'm not trying to downplay the verses from everyone here because this has some real high pedigree verses on here, not just from the two members of Mobb Deep. We have Clips on here, both Pusha T and Malice. We have Nas twice. We have Georgia Smith doing a vocal. We have Raekwon, Ghostface Killah. We got a lot going on here. But somehow, man, The Alchemist makes a lot of this fit together in a way that makes a lot of sense, especially in the back half, where a lot of these beats, like, this is an album that is very aware of the fact that it is a posthumous album. Like, a lot of these verses are about death, they're about legacy, they're about the work that Mobb Deep did, they're about, what names they put on the map, the scene that they come from. And a lot of it feels like these verses are being delivered in an ominous past tense of like it sounds like a ghost rapped some of these. And the beats match that. Some of them are ethereal and woozy and feel like they are coming from the great beyond. And you know what? It makes for a really solid record.
Yeah, like that context of Prodigy like being gone, but being able to, from beyond the grave, slip in and out to deliver one final lap of dominance over these beats is a really interesting textual quality that this album gets. Because I was thinking about, obviously, this is a very different album. I was thinking about By the Time I Get to Phoenix, where
Yeah.
Groggs is only on like two or three of those tracks. But whenever he comes in, the shape and the form of the album just completely changes. But on this, it's a lot more consistent between Havoc and Prodigy. And Against the World, even, it ends with Prodigy saying, "See you on the other side." Like they really know what they're doing here. And I'll give way more credit to Havoc on the production front because him and the Alchemist are basically going back and forth on these beats.
Hmm.
And they work with a really great synergy, right? The Alchemist knows how to get really good stuff together for these guys to rap over, and so does Havoc, right? He knows how to build beats, boom bap beats that are going to work really well with Prodigy and Havoc's voices. I'm sure he's been sitting on some of these verses for years,
For
and it's just
sure.
been like tweaking, right? Against the World starts with this great, like, kind of mix of old and new styles of boom bap, where you've got that,
Hmm.
that really low horn and that muffled drum, but you've also got these like really quiet chipmunk vocal samples in the back of the mix that feels really modern, right? And so there
Hmm.
you immediately get this kind of fusion of time periods for boom bap. Meanwhile, Gunfire, which is the first Alchemist track, sounds the most like old-fashioned boom bap out of any of the beats on here because it's a lot of high strings, a lot of DJ scratches in the beginning. There's these long synth notes that kind of permeate throughout the different lines, and so you're getting a soundscape that kind of represents the old and new of boom bap and East Coast hip hop. And I mean, I've become way more of a boom bap guy than I ever thought I would be because I was listening to like the new West Side Gun and Cheat Codes, and like that's really where I think some of my favorite hip hop is in that more East Coast boom bap stuff. But on this album, man, by the time you get to Look at Me, the one with clips on it,
Mm.
I'm just like, oh, this is stealthily like one of the best hip hop releases of the year.
This
And I
is
was
this
not
is
expecting it
one.
at all. Like I didn't know Mobb Deep was gonna have a new album coming out soon. And so when I saw it was here, I immediately put it on the docket just because I was like, I want us to listen to this and talk about this because I don't want to forget about it. I don't want to miss it.
Well, and the thing is too is that, and I'm not trying to, talk any kind of shit on their legacy or anything. Like nothing is ever going to take away the fact that, these are the guys behind the Infamous, which curiously enough, I believe was what was voted number one on the recent Rolling Stone 100 Best Hip Hop Albums of All Time list. And I remember seeing a continued response of people being like, "Oh, that's a good album, but like the best." And I'm just like, "Okay, far be it from me, the whitest of white folk, to come around and tell people who is who, but like the Infamous is a fantastic choice for your number one hip hop album of all time. Like you look at me and you tell me that the album that has Shook Ones Part 2, one of the most legendary hip hop songs of all time, and like legitimately effective and like chilling hip hop songs I've ever heard, yeah, I think that deserves its place amongst the canon of the greatest of all time. And, my word does not mean much, but I still think it's a worthy consideration. And you have, of course, that's not the only good album Mobb Deep have. Hell on Earth is also fantastic, so is Murder Music. But you can definitely tell that once the turn of the millennium happened, Mobb Deep kind of became victims of, where rap was headed, and that was not where they were. So their label
Yeah.
was just kind of, have them crank out music that resulted in a lot of unmemorable albums that just kind of have scraps and bits and bots. So like there was not exactly a reason to anticipate a new Mobb Deep album being super great. I mean, like, that's just kind of how it is. And again, you listen to some of these verses and it's like, wow, this is actually like top quality shit. Like, you listen to something that, like, even if they don't have the biggest influence on the track as a whole, you still listen to something like, I think my favorite song on this record in particular is Pour the Henny, which is,
Yes.
fantastic for many different reasons, but also just like Nas is fucking unbelievable on this. Like true, like every time
Yeah.
he shows up, actually, I'm just like, damn, this dude is in the middle of a renaissance and he does not want to let you forget that. And I applaud the effort. And like obviously he had ties to Mobb Deep just because they weren't from the same part of New York, but they were from like similar parts of New York, I believe. I'm not educated about this aspect of the rap scene. This is the boom bap sort of like 90s New York scene is probably the one I know the least about history wise. That's my bad. But I still know that, the boroughs, and then there was a lot of rivalry between different people on here, but it does feel like everybody is coming together. And again, you have Clips on the album too, which is funny because it's like Clips are very much a southern hip hop group. They are very much about the very wild experimentation that they would do with that Neptune's production. So hearing them be themselves on, again, glitzy New York style beats is like it's kind of a privilege to be able to hear something like that. And
Yeah, and they're bringing that
getting
like they go way more like back and forth line for line on this than they do
mhm,
like they don't have individual verses. They're going back and forth the whole time that they're on the track. And so it brings a different kind of energy to it. But I mean,
mhm.
it is a really impressive change of pace for them to see them ride like a East Coast boom bap beat like this.
Oh yeah. It just shows you that like the New York scene was, probably a lot more versatile than some people tend to give it credit just because again, when
Yeah,
you're competing with Southern and West Coast hip hop, it's like those are known for being kind of out there. And this is known for being the kind of the core of the sound necessarily. But like this does a really good job of having a lot of beats with really ornamental detail and just kind of thrusting what this scene was about. Like this album to me subtextually is about Mobb Deep and their legacy, but it is also about New York. It is about this scene. It is about these people that were all there at this one time. And they have several songs that sort of paint you that picture. And there are moments though where I will say there it kind of shows through to me that some of this is assembled piecemeal, and there's no song on here that I think is bad or even like an individual component that I can isolate, be like, I don't really like this. But there are moments where the mesh of everything together feels a bit, I won't say slapdash, but it just feels like it doesn't all wholly make sense. I feel that way predominantly about the first introduction of Georgia Smith, who, I mean, unbelievable voice and vocal contributions to this song. But the sample beat here, which is like, I is this from a film score or is this a piece of classical music? Because that ascendant string, that na 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 na, I've heard that before and I cannot figure out from where. But like it has this really urgent kind of sad quality to it, and Georgia Smith's on there with this, again, this beautiful vocal performance, and like the tone of the verses feels like a weird mesh for this song. It gets a
yeah,
reprisal later that I think is a lot better.
especially Nas's verse on that song in particular feels strange. Like this is not a song where you should joke about swinging and missing with Madonna.
Yeah, it's a little bit like tonally, you can feel as though, they had to use what they had to work with. Just because you have some good verses doesn't mean that everything is going to be 100% golden. And, there are points where that are just kind of better than others on the album. I think that actually it does have, like, it has a really strong start of Against the World through Look at Me. The M to the O to the B to the B, a bit of a repetitive hook, if I'm honest. But I mean, we pick back up with Mr. Magic, Score Points. My Era, Pour the Henny, and Clear Black Nights is an impeccable run of music. And I also really like Discontinued. And it doesn't end on quite the note of finality I think you would want from something like this. But at the same time, I understand the decision not to, because the lack of conclusion almost feels like its own form of respect. Like they don't
Yeah.
want to shut the lid on this group. They don't want to close the door forever. It's like you can't with these guys. They are infinitely influential and important in this scene. And no matter how you end their discography, they're going to live on through the people they inspired. And I feel like that makes sense within the record. Like it has limitations, but I think that its attempt to be a definitive chapter in their discography is admirable and successful.
I completely agree. Maybe it'll be the final Mobb Deep album. Maybe it won't. Maybe there's more stuff that they're sitting on, or maybe Havoc is just going to be doing his own thing for the rest of, his career. But either way, great contribution to a really solid discography, right? I love this as a bookend for Mobb Deep, but I could easily see more coming in the future that impresses just as much, hopefully.
I mean, I think you could reasonably argue that this is a top three Mobb Deep album, considering like the discography it's batting against, which, not talking shit. I'm just saying that like those two classics they have are big classics and not a lot is going to bat in that ballpark. But this scratches at it. It gets a little bit of the magic is really there. And it seems like that's the climate of how this is being received. Like it seems as though like, and I see a lot of posthumous albums get fucking railed out of existence when they, and I mean, like, I understand, like, posthumous albums in hip hop have a fucking horrible reputation just because of how many more recent artists have passed away. And, like, XXX Tentacion's legacy is going to be that his label pimped him out until they had nothing left to gouge him from. So
Fucking
it
Pop
is
Smoke
very
too.
nice and refreshing to see this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love, this kind of feels like a labor of love on Havoc's part because I know Havoc and Prodigy like were having a falling out in the last years of Prodigy's life that they did make up towards the end by what history says, but still feels nice to have an album post reunion for them that really, cements them as something that's going to be a presence in the genre forever, which I mean they are. They are already, and they always will
Yeah,
be.
big thumbs up for
Big.
both of these. Obviously, R.I.P. Prodigy, R.I.P. D'Angelo. Fuck, man, what do you even say?
Ugh, we try. We do our
We
best.
try, we try. So,
I'm gonna let you
man,
start
I just want to ask one question before I start. How did you watch this?
legally.
Yeah, because you fucking can't find it anywhere. It's not on any streaming service. It has no releases. This movie is like it. Funnily enough, I listened to. I didn't remember that he even had this, but a sort of long time kind of old friend of the show, Spencer, who runs several different very successful podcasts, who we're chummy with, did an entire series retrospective on the career of Max Landis in one of his podcast series that I listened to sort of brush up myself with, reacquainting myself with everything the films de un Max Landis. And man, going through and seeing like this was nostalgia in the worst way possible. Back when I think it was probably 2015, 2016, like right when I was about to get out of high school is when I discovered Max Landis as an online presence. Because Max Landis, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who have a life, Max Landis is the son of notable filmmaker John Landis, who, if you don't know who
Extremely
he is,
notable, right?
yeah,
John Landis has a great reputation,
and
despite
is
all odds.
well, I wouldn't say he has a great reputation,
His
but he does
movies,
have,
his
yes,
movies are well regarded,
The
certainly.
Blues Brothers, for
American
instance,
Werewolf in
is
London.
American Werewolf. I mean, I love American Werewolf in London. That's a great fucking movie. But like he is also like he's one of those people who feels like, well, I mean, it's not that he feels like he was a pal of Spielberg's back in the day. It was like Landis is in the same area that like Joe Dante is in, where they kind of really focused on these specific kinds of kind of Spielberg derivative genre films that focus on these like really, really potent elements of like genre synchronicity. Like Joe Dante is the guy who, he made Gremlins and basically he made Gremlins like 15 times with his film career. Landis has a bit of a more diverse set of films, but also a lot of movies that like nobody remembers because the most notable thing about Landis, and this is unfortunately very relevant to some things I want to talk about later.
Unfortunately, probably not even the worst story that we're gonna tell about a guy
Yes,
with the last
actually,
name
funnily
Landis.
enough, unfucking fortunately, Landis is best known these days for being responsible for the death of 5 people because when they were making the Twilight Zone movie, which is a series of like short anthology films that were all done by notable sort of directors at the time in that sort of Spielberg vein, he was one of the people who did one of the shorts, is that Landis, under his incredibly loose supervision, a helicopter crash occurred and violently decapitated a child. And he was embroiled in legal disputes and like lots of stuff that like basically Spielberg had enough money to make some of that go away. And there's probably a lot of behind the scenes stuff about that entire thing that we don't want to know, frankly. Landis was kind of ostracized from a lot of people he knew.
The thing about the Landis story is
The
that,
first one.
sure, well, the thing about this John Landis story is that, sure, he was not technically responsible for the actual accident, but basically every bit of paperwork that he signed off on put everybody that was in there in that situation in that position, right? They
Mhm.
were his responsibility.
He knocked down the dominoes and the dominoes were everyone else. And this is important later, mind you, but basically Landis is one of those guys who, yeah, he kind of fell off and, didn't do much after this whole fiasco, but he is still big enough of a name and has enough movies that people recognize to be kind of a minor kind of B player legend in Hollywood. So he has a son, Max Landis, who comes onto the scene in the early 2010s because Max Landis starts off as a YouTuber. Max starts making videos that are primarily to do with like nerd culture stuff like Star Wars and Superman and comics. One of the biggest projects he was a part of is that he wrote his own sort of line of Superman comics called Superman American Alien, which I remember getting really into just because Max Landis was one of those people who was like, Superman's not boring. Nobody just knows how to write him correctly. And unfortunately, he's very correct about that. James Gunn basically proved that to us this year, in fact, thank God. Though he was notable for basically the viral take that Max Landis became known for is that if you've ever heard anyone call Rey from Star Wars a Mary Sue, thank Max Landis for that because he was very
Yeah.
outspoken in his criticism of that. And look, the last thing I want to do on any podcast of my own or in just my waking life is talk about Star Wars. I don't want to talk about Star Wars ever again in my life. I want to watch The Last Jedi, enjoy myself, and ignore the fact that people are dumb and stupid and wrong and loud, and I don't like them. That being said, Max Landis was wrong about Rey being a Mary Sue. I would like to note that I just want that to be a matter of record. I think that that's a stupid, stupid criticism that ignores basically the entire text of the film, and I don't like defending J.J. Abrams either, but I'm just saying I think it's dumb and stupid and wrong. But Max sort of came onto the scene as this guy who was like people saw him, his fans at least, as savvy. He was a writer and he had clever takes. He had things that immediately engaged you. And the talent that Max has, and I do think that he has one very specific talent that I will applaud him for. He is a phenomenal idea salesman. He is great at pitching things. He basically, that was all he did, is that he would basically set up, like, he had this thing where he was, in an interview and he was talking about this pirate movie that he had conceptualized, and then like it did all these things and hit all these beats, and then bam, it's a Captain Hook origin story movie. Like, that was his thing. It was almost very Doug Walker coded in a way, and how like
Yeah.
comedy to Doug Walker is nothing but references, but screenwriting to Max Landis is clever subversion of pop culture. It's like it's always backstories. It's always like existing things. And I was a stupid high schooler. This kind of thing interested me. What can I say? But, and I think 2015, something totally unprecedented happened. Max Landis had written several screenplays that had been on this sort of big, sort of insider Hollywood screenplay wish list, this market of very hot screenplays that directors wanted to get a hold of, because he attached himself to this film called Chronicle, directed by Josh Trank, who is like, basically that movie is, I've actually rewatched that somewhat recently, in fact, and it's, that's a movie that's the found footage movie about the kids who get superpowers. Michael B. Jordan, that was one of his earliest roles. It was like the biggest thing for Dane DeHaan for a while. And that's a really creative movie. I like
Good
the found
movie.
footage gimmick in that. Yeah, like it's solid. I don't love the movie like I kind of used to. It's
I mean,
really
yeah, it's good
creative.
until the end when it has to stretch itself really hard to do Akira homages.
It does, but I still love how creative that gets. It does stretch itself thin, and it does kind of abandon the core of like the idea of, oh, the found footage is controlled by a character with telekinesis, which, yeah, that's an inspired idea. Sorry, that's not going away, as like that's a really, really great idea. And Chronicle is a movie where it's like everything about it works. It doesn't work super well. It's not the best movie ever, but it's a clever idea. It's a small budget, and it was a bunch of promising young talent that nobody could ignore. And of course, it was a low budget movie that made a lot of fucking money. So this perfectly poised Max Landis to be this new screenwriter wonderkind. And in 2015, four of this dude's screenplays were made into major motion pictures. Now, nobody remembers them. Nobody likes them because they were, in at best, incredibly mediocre films. But this doesn't happen. People,
This doesn't
screenwriters,
happen to anybody.
no, like,
Nobody, unless you're Steven Soderbergh.
well,
Three of your
yes,
screenplays did not become movies in 365 days.
four of your movies don't become movies in 4 years. Like, again, like this, he was talked about for a reason, and he had videos that he was putting together as more kind of short film video essay sort of hybrids. In a way, he was kind of a trailblazer for a lot of the video essay stuff that we would see in the latter half of the decade. But he had videos like Wrestling Isn't Wrestling, which is like the first big thing that he ever made, which was this essentially an ode to why the storytelling of wrestling was fascinating, and kind of a rebuttal against the long held rebuke of wrestling of being like, everybody knows it's fake. And this was the, yeah, we all know, here's why it's good anyway. And thankfully, some of my favorite YouTubers like Mr. John Super Eye Patch Wolf Walsh have come along to fill the void of these with much better wrestling video essays. Thank God. But still, he was a pioneer of this, and these videos were very DIY. They were very homespun. They were very much Max and his friends made them, and they were charming. And they had heart. Like, Wrestling Isn't Wrestling is one of my favorite kind of archetypes of media, in that it is an ode to a kind of storytelling and a kind of media that is sneered at. Wrestling was never thought of as, anything worth considering until the internet kind of gave it a bit of a second life in this sort of phase of talking about things online. And it was an ode, it was a love letter to this thing that everybody hated and thought was stupid. And that's what made it charming. And so when you see him get success like this, and he makes scripts like Victor Frankenstein and Mr. Right, movies that again nobody fucking remembers, you're still like, oh, he's out there, he's doing stuff. This is cool. I watched movies like American Ultra to see like this dude's stuff, and because it was very college student screenwriter movies. Like he
Yeah,
was aping
American Ultra is a
Tarantino.
big college student screenwriter movie, but I will say in a very good way with that one especially.
And that's the thing is that not all of these movies I think are like blanketly horrible. Like Victor Frankenstein's kind of unremarkable. And you can also argue, and I'm sure Max does, is that once a director gets a screenplay, the person who wrote the screenplay has no say on what they're doing afterwards. It's like, yeah, he wrote the screenplay to those movies. Who knows how similar they were to the final products? But I mean,
Yeah.
like, in some cases, he's kind of commented on that, like, Victor Frankenstein is like a big diversion from what he wrote, but things like Mr. Right are exactly the kind of movie that he wrote, and American Ultra is kind of a compromise. That's probably why it's a little bit better than some of his other stuff. But regardless, he was a guy who was also appearing on channels like Red Letter Media. In a now, I think, unlisted video, he was a part of one of my favorite things that they make, which is the Best of the Worst series, where they watch terrible old B movies and get in a circle and make fun of them. I have been so depressed and sad and watched like 9 of those in a row so many times and throughout my life. But Max is appearing in these nerd scenes that make him really likable. He's this colorful character. He's this guy who loves big ideas. He's loud. He's kind of expressionistic. And yeah, he's annoying. But if you're 18, he's annoying in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
He had this kind of appearance too of him being like he very much wore the male feminist kind of badge that feels very slimy now, obviously, but like back when these problems weren't as big as they were, he was just kind of a dude and it was like, oh, he's nice and progressive and he's got rainbow hair, whatever the fuck. So this guy feels like he's about to blow up, right? And then there is gotta be one of the most notorious tweets of all time at this point. When a movie of his gets made into production, and notably, the person he wrote a script for a movie called Bright. And his first choice of person to make that film was David Ayer. And David Ayer was signed on to the project. So he got his dream pick for that. And he tweets, if everything goes right, I really think Bright could be my Star Wars. And this was before we knew like anything. We didn't know
Anything
the
about what that
trailers.
movie was.
And people were just like, oh, okay, so this is where you're going to prove yourself. And naturally, if you know a Max Landis project these days, you probably know Bright. It is one of the most notorious failures of Netflix original films to the point where I almost feel like that was the last Netflix original movie that I remember being big because it was a failure. Like,
I
they've
mean, the
had,
Cloverfield one that they did a little bit after that got a similar level of notoriety because of how they marketed it.
it was a stunt,
But
you know?
yeah, Bright has to be like the most notorious Netflix bomb.
And I'm not going to get into why Bright is bad because it's very obvious why Bright is bad. And frankly, that's well trodden ground in the YouTube video essay sphere. And I could never be as funny or as insightful as many of these videos. In fact, one of the oldest, like pre Jams and Tea podcast video you can dig up on this channel. Morgan and I do shit on that movie when we make a top 10 movies of like 20, whenever the fuck that came out, 19, 18, can't remember.
17.
But 17. There is a video of Baby Jake and Baby Morgan trashing that fucking movie on this channel somewhere. So
Love it.
that halts his momentum very considerably. And man, I have a bit of a story that's short
Okay.
that is so embarrassing in hindsight. Like I almost regret recommending this movie to you because I have to divulge this information is that Max Landis, like at the time, he was very good at selling the fact that he was just like, yeah, some of these movies or these scripts that I wrote aren't great, but like I didn't have any say in them. So like what the fuck ever. And so I just kind of went on the assumption that his scripts were probably better. And he would always talk about scripts that he hadn't sold yet that were sort of out there. And I would track them down. I remember he was constantly talking about a script for a movie he wrote named Deeper. And I remember tracking that down and reading that shit like it was a novel. It was about a person who gets into a submersible craft that falls to like the bottom of the ocean. And it's like a psychological sort of like bottle thriller that takes place in that, which put a
Hmm.
pin in that. I have something to say about it later. But I was into this guy. Like his videos were funny and I liked his personality and he wasn't overexposed quite yet. And any bad shit that came from him was just like, oh, it was because, they didn't understand it, Like they didn't get his screenplay and they just made a bad movie out of it. And so, Jen, do you know what it feels like to hear that one of your creative idols is a sex pest from your mother? Because let me tell you,
No.
that's a sinking feeling. My mom loved her the, gossip columns and shit back in the day. She was a big reader of TMZ back when it was kind of socially acceptable to do so. But she paid attention to this guy who was kind of a Hollywood insider who would do blind buys of information. And there was a blind buy of information one day that had to do with a
What is a
certain
blind buy of information? What the fuck does
I
that even
really
mean?
wish I could explain it to you in a way that made me sound smart, but I can't. I don't know what these things are. I just know they exist. So what
It's
happens
just like a
is,
gotcha game for headlines because some
yes,
fucker knows everything. Like,
information broke. Like this motherfucker's the shadow broker from Mass Effect for all I fucking know. And basically what happens is that there were rumors about this going around at the time, mainly because I think this had to do with a YouTuber's ex-girlfriend. It might have been Ray William
it
Johnson
was
now that I'm thinking
Zoe
about it.
fucking Quinn.
Was it Zoe Quinn?
It was
Oh
Zoe
God.
Quinn was one of the people who initially like put
Jesus.
put feelers out into the world that
Okay,
people knew that this guy, that Max Landis was
all
bad news.
all of our viewers, if you don't know who Zoe Quinn is, don't look up this name. Don't do it. Don't go down this rabbit hole. You don't want to know where this leads.
On the
So,
contrary,
anywho,
listen to the Get Cynical Gamergate season because it's really good. Uh,
yes, that's a great podcast. Good.
do
Shout out to
that
Spencer and
instead.
Esther. Um, yes, basically, there was a blind buy of information released to someone who basically was like, there is a famous Hollywood director's son who is a huge sex pest. And basically, everyone immediately just were like, we know it's Max. And
Mhm.
I'm going to quote the Get Cynical podcast. Shout out to Spencer and Esther. Of all the people to get Me Too'd, Max Landis got Me Too'd harder than most by
Yeah,
so, so, so many people. And granted, it was for offenses that varied in severity, but I mean, like, this went back years. This went through multiple film sets, video productions,
I was gonna say it went
attitudes.
back so far
Just
that even Josh Trank was like, "Yeah, I didn't let that motherfucker come on the set after a few weeks."
and I would also like to point out that Max still makes videos to this day and is somewhat successful, mainly because, the ecosystem of information on places like YouTube, like everybody who watches Max Landis's videos probably has no fucking idea any of this shit happened. Because
He
why
just put
would
out like a
they?
3 hour long Superman fan film that he's been teasing for years.
Yep. I mean, like he's still successful, and he has like vehemently denied like all of these allegations, but in like such a broad, like, dude, you're not even doing a good job at covering your own ass. It's kind of like the way I'll put it is that the allegations against Max Landis are the allegations against Michael Jackson. All of the things that we know definitely 100% happened are bad enough for you to go, oh, I don't want anything to do with this. Like, maybe the more severe things are shades of untrue, but what we know is true is bad
We have
enough,
enough
and
proof.
we can just leave it at that. So basically, I don't want to say that Max is blacklisted, but like Red Letter Media, fucking the most not drama people I follow in like any context, unlist their video with this motherfucker, and then later review a bunch of his movies really poorly, which is very
I went
funny.
back and watched the Half in the Bag on Me, Him, Her before this was obviously before the fucking. And so they're
Uh-huh.
just like, oh yeah, our friend Max Landis.
And the whole time they
They've
are
made
dancing
jokes
around the
about him on
fact
Best of the Worst many years later. They allude to regretting
it's very
being
decisive.
around
Like
him.
it's like you can tell it's a pointed jab. Like you can tell that maybe perhaps they had known something. But I don't want to
Uh,
get into speculation here, but point is this dude's stock rises so high and collapses disastrously after both
just as quickly,
Bright
right?
Bright tanks, that tank and his reputation tanks, and this dude is just, he's gone. And so before all of that happens, Max gets the opportunity to make his own film, Me, Him, Her, directed and written by Max Landis and starring a bunch of people that he knows, was friends with, and some actors, like Haley Joel Osment is in the movie pretty prominently. There are a bunch of actors who are just kind of character actors who have shown up in some things like,
Scott Bakula, Gina
Scott Bakula is
Davis.
in it and actually does have a couple of funny lines in it. But I guess I will just say this is that Max Landis very much projected the image of a very like socially aware kind of, again, the male feminist kind of, like he had the rainbow hair. It was very insidious looking back. But it also, like, it was very much a conscious effort on his behalf to manage what kind of person he was and how he marketed himself. And what I will say about Me, Him, Her is you take a look at what Max Landis looked like in 2018 and you're like, that is definitely a film made by a guy who looks and talks like that. So what is Me, Him, Her, Jen?
So Me, Him, Her is a movie that you think is going to be about two two best friends, right? Because the movie starts with Brendan, who is a lead on a TV show, but he's a young actor, very lucky guy as far as the business in LA goes. He calls up his best friend back home in Florida and says, I need you to come to LA so you can help me figure out how to come out to my parents because he has just now recently realized that he is gay. I'm like, okay, this easy sell, very easy formula for a movie like this. You can make a movie like this, like that. Like the whole movie congeals for me immediately when you tell me this is the premise.
Mhm.
And so the movie has this bizarre tone to it where you think it's going to be like legitimately trying to grapple with issues of like gender and sexuality in 2010s Hollywood media culture, but it's all just like Doug Walker piss takes at industry guys. Like when we get to the first scene with Brendan talking to the industry fucks and they're all just like, you could have told people that you were gay, but now you're too famous. You can't tell them you're gay.
Have you tried not being gay? Like, just,
What's the one?
it
There's one line that I actually did think was pretty funny, but one of the
is it
guys,
is it the why did you think that I was supposed to tell you about your sexuality?
well,
Like,
yeah, that's not what I meant, but that is funny, right?
yeah,
That I'll give
like,
him that. The first time somebody says that to Brendan, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a good bit.
it's like, what
That's
do you mean
funny.
you knew? And he's just like, yeah, we knew you were gay. And then he's just like, well, why didn't you tell me? And they're like, we what? And I'm like, okay, that at least assures me that Max Landis, who, at least as far as we know, is a very straight man, probably a little too straight, is he has gay friends, probably. He's
Yeah.
not completely out of the loop.
Well, and the thing about the everybody knows he's gay thing is that it's a funny joke when it's his best friend, but when everybody in the movie keeps saying that to him, it deflates what the movie is supposed to be about in a sense.
Yep.
And that's because the biggest issue with this movie on just like a fundamental screenplay level, never mind the comedy or the character writing or whatever, which I'm going to get into in more detail. But the problem with this movie is that it very much sells itself as being about one thing in the first 10 minutes. And then by the 20-minute mark, it has become a movie that is about a completely different thing. that is not as interesting and just doesn't play out as interestingly as the first premise could have
What
been.
if we made chasing Amy straighter?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the movie that this is chasing the most is Kevin Smith's Chasing Amy, which is aged interestingly, right? It's a very quaint movie made by, honestly, a guy whose place in the industry is not all that incomparable from Landis's, aside from the fact that
Landis was a
Kevin
Kevin
Smith,
Smith type figure. You're totally right.
yeah, and a movie like Me, Him, Her would have established somebody like Landis as a protege of Smith's, right?
Hmm.
Somebody who is really savvy about Hollywood, but is kind of an outsider figure to the actual means of production or whatever you want to
Right.
call it. But Smith also doesn't have that nepotism baby angle, which means he was immediately making more interesting stuff
Which
the first few years of his career.
which
Whereas
Max to this
Landis,
day insists the fact that he is a Nepo baby did not get him anywhere because he's just like, nobody cares about who John Landis is. And I'm like, buddy, I get what you mean in like a broad sense, but shut up. Like,
yeah, Jack Quaid is refreshingly straightforward about this.
yeah, like, and honestly, like, that's the way you go. Like, don't push against that where it's just like, dude, you had more money and resources. Like, don't push me with this whole like nobody cares who John Landis is. John Landis did that horrible thing, so why would people like me? Dude, your dad made the Blues Brothers. That's gonna get you pull. Stop trying to pretend otherwise.
I do think it is funny. Legitimately, I think this is a very good joke in the movie. That this is a movie that starts with three people going to a gay bar and then a straight hookup happens. Because the
Yep,
way the movie starts is okay, you've got Brendan, who's the gay actor, and you've got Corey, who's the straight guy out of towny. And then you have Gabby, who is this lesbian, although she never really describes herself that way explicitly, who has just recently been dumped, who is out at the bar having a bender, who essentially collides with the plot and absorbs much of it afterwards,
yep,
where
basically.
Corey and Gabby spend the rest of the first act having a meet cute and then hooking up and drunkenly hooking up in the back seat of her car, which is
With some dialogue that, considering some of the things we know about Max Landis, is real interesting to examine. I was about to say posthumously, but you know what? No, that does kind of work for this.
posthumously.
That I would consider reviewing this movie is a posthumous act because, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this movie does not exist anymore. But I mean, there's some like she literally has a line that's just like, "You're not going to go to jail." It's like, whoa, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a movie. I mean, Corey, the character of Corey is a guy whose main trait is that he's surprised that people put up with his bullshit.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like there are so
basically.
many beats in this movie where he does something stupid and then immediately says, "Oh my God, I did something stupid," and then immediately says, "Oh my God, you're still here." He is a
Yep.
guy who is constantly impressed by people's resilience to his bumbling idiot nature, which is just, again, a very impressive self-own.
Yeah, it's like, do you think that may because like I at least the way I read it, I immediately when I watched this, even when I was like more into Landis and who he was, is that like I immediately was like, oh, this is a self-insert. Because like there's some moments where they get kind of they flirt with the idea of maybe our main character isn't completely straight. Like there's very, very subtle kind of hints of just him being like and just like the idea where he is kind of like he's not quite effeminate, but he's not masculine. Like he's in his own weird kind of bubble and like his constantly like again, he is a walking shenanigan that other people have to tolerate and he's like,
What
"Oh,
is
you
bro
tolerate me."
wearing?
And it's yeah, it the less
What
said
is
about
bro
Max Landis's
wearing?
wardrobe the better. But it's very it's obvious, but it's also like this is what someone who thinks that they're much less annoying than they are sees themselves as like again, you can tell a lot by an author's self-insert as to what they think about themselves, but it is also in like how the world of the story reacts to them and it's just it's very telling. It doesn't like weigh down the movie or anything. Like the movie has many other bigger problems. That's not really one of them. He's just kind of like, if anything, he's just kind of an ill-defined character. I didn't really like get what his deal was, I
I don't know
guess.
anything about this man.
Not like who is this man? Like honestly, like he is just a an unremarkable guy. And like that's the contrast they go for in this movie is that what this movie is trying to also do is be like it's a movie about LA and how LA is weird. And like there's these weird like jokes and non sequiturs will just happen and you can feel the screenwriter behind this just being like and in parentheses this is Lynchian dot and it's like
The thing with the Jägermeister and the rum and coke, for example, where I'm just like, that
please.
if this is like this is not satire, this is just a thing that happened to you one time that you put in your script.
Very transparently like there's so many things that just happen so that this can be an whoa, LA is surreal and weird and full of colorful wacky characters that don't make any sense and diverge from the off the beaten path that is most commonly tread in films like this. Like this movie to me, like when I hear people describe it, I'm always like it's just because I had to like latch onto him and just like felt like I understood what he was about. But like to me, when I first saw this and I was like getting into film school and shit, I was like, "Oh, I know what this is. This is a zillennial making what his equivalent of a Woody Allen movie is." And not like a
Ugh.
yeah, exactly. Like and I'm talking about like the lighter like, Midnight in Paris or Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex but couldn't ask. Like those kind of like the B plus Woody Allen movies that I mean like and I'm not just comparing him to Woody Allen because he's also a sex pest, but like you know what I mean. It's this
Yeah, I
tone
completely know what you mean.
that's like kind of self-reflexive, but like not really. It is the type of movie that if Orson Welles saw it, he would be like, I think that this man is pathetic. He would say about Max Landis what he said about Woody Allen, basically.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up as well, of like it's a movie about a guy who pretends that he hates himself, but he actually hates himself.
It's and I mean it's the energy of it. It just radiates insufferable YouTube video. Like this is a
Oh
movie.
God. Well, don't even get me started because okay, there's a bunch of YouTube edits in
y-
this. That's the only way
Uh,
I could describe it,
Oh
where
God, they're all flooding back to me.
there's a
Ugh.
bunch of like jokes that are made out of YouTube style editing choices of like the first time you see Brendan's crush, there's a freeze frame where a bunch of like MS Paint red lines are like making a what's the word I'm looking for? Like making a shadow silhouette of him. And there's just like scribbled, wow, or something like that.
It's
And then there's
well,
a
I'll tell you
bit
what it is. It's Scott Pilgrim. It's Scott Pilgrim made by a nepo baby and not Edgar Wright's talent.
And there's a bit where he's in the bathroom at the gay bar, which is the fact that there's the title card of Batman Forever is like printed on the wall of the bathroom. Is that meant to be like a jab at Schumacher?
See. I don't think
I
so,
don't
but I
think it
but I
is.
that if I say I don't think so, that assumes that I am assuming that Max Landis's incorporation of it is charitable, which I don't want to assume because I don't want to assume anything about Max Landis anymore.
I
But
don't think that either way, the joke doesn't work well enough to get the point across because are
mm-mm.
we supposed to be laughing at Batman Forever? Or are we
Eh,
supposed to be
we're
laughing at
supposed to be laughing
what's
because oh, it's a comic book reference.
yeah.
That's the comedy.
And then I knew it was over when he's in the gay bar, when he's in the bathroom and somebody recognizes him. And oh my God, this guy, oh boy. There's a lot of loud, drunk fairy acting in this that is caricature to the point of offensive. But eventually, Brendan just says, "My name is Bronk Oslaw," and you see like syllable by syllable text appear on the screen, and I'm like, "Wow, Max Landis predicted." the genre of TikTok videos that are for people who want to watch TikToks on the train, but are at least embarrassed enough about that they don't have their fucking speakers on. And so like there are subtitles and they're high lit syllable by syllable. And that happens two or three times in this where like text will appear on screen syllable by syllable as somebody says a line. And it's like,
And
that's not funny. That's
it's
not a joke.
done with no like consideration. Yeah, it's like it is
There's
done
no
in a
style
way.
to it. He just thinks it would be a funny place to do that thing, but it doesn't
Yeah,
add to any like joke, you know?
like for example, when I edit our show, occasionally there will be a tiny little bit where I'll do a tiny zoom or a little bit of text or whatever, and that's always to accentuate a comedic beat. There are no, and I'm not saying that he does a bad job at them. I'm saying he doesn't do a job at them. They don't
But
have beats. It just happens, and you're kind of like, oh, why did that? And then often it'll be like you'll hear like the sound effect of like a crayon or something like drawing something, and then that's what makes the text appear. And again, it's very wannabe Edgar Wright, very wannabe kind of like it. It just it feels like something that results from you being like an outsider to a medium, but also not understanding how either of the mediums that you're dealing with work. Which is weird
yeah.
because his YouTube videos feel like they make more visual sense than his movie does.
Well, like he knows how to satirize advertising pretty well to some extent because there was that one promo vid that well, basically a funny thing that happened to this movie is that he had to market it basically by himself once
Mm-hmm.
he was about to get it released. And so he would just like make a bunch of videos on his YouTube channel. And one that he did was he had a male and a female model in underwear just like standing on the set. And then the video starts and he walks on and it's just like, okay, you can go. And then the real commercial starts. I'm like, okay, he knows what
Yeah,
he's doing as like
he's savvy.
he's savvy. He's very media marketing savvy, but that doesn't really apply to any kind of satire that he can make in this about being gay in Hollywood, which is not a thing that he actually understands to begin with, and is not a thing that he knows how to make fun of.
No, and it's listen, we're both queer people. The thing is that like I'm not claiming to speak with any kind of like authority. I didn't confer with the council as to what I think about this fucking movie or whatever. It's like I have just as much authority to speak on the content of this movie as anybody of else. I don't care. And frankly, I watched this movie before I knew all of that shit about myself. As far as I was concerned, I was a straight white man when I watched this movie. I'm still white, but it's part of the moniker. But the thing is that when you come at this with a fresh perspective, it's just like you see someone who has like a well-meaning ally's exterior understanding of some of the difficulties that someone like this might encounter, but like the interiority of this character and how he struck, it's not here. It's not, and I'm not saying that like, oh, it's awful, it's offensive. I'm just saying it's empty. I
We
don't
spend
know.
no time learning any of the deeper parts of the character of Brendan.
No, in fact, he is shockingly like not in a lot of this movie. It's
Yeah,
very
no, like he's just
strange.
straight up not in a bunch of it.
In
It's
fact,
bizarre.
the love interest of Gabby kind of usurps his place in the film.
Gabby has the most amount of things that happen to her because of her like life and situation because we have the whole ex-girlfriend character and the whole like
Which
people that she lives with on that apartment floor. But yeah, I mean, this is a movie about fuck, I don't know.
I
Hey,
you
like
know
I
what,
couldn't tell you
Jen?
what this movie is about.
It's so strange because this movie should be about Gabby when you like
Yeah.
look at it from an exterior, because like she's the one who has the revelation about herself that's like it's at least heavily implied that she believes she is a lesbian and has an ex-girlfriend, and then she gets with our main character and she still doesn't like fully know or understand, but she's like she's going through it, and you do see her kind of struggle. It's also overshadowed by the fact that I would really love to get a bunch of different queer women's opinions on the ex-girlfriend character in this film. Because
I
if
can
anything
tell
in
you
this,
what I think, which is that the like monster edits that they give her. Oh boy.
like,
There's definitely some weird misogyny going on here
it's
with
there,
the way that that character is treated.
there is a weird Venn diagram of subtle lesbophobia and subtle misogyny that crosses over in this one point with this one character that's just like, does Max Landis think that people like this are real?
Well, when you get to his cameo in the movie and the way that that scene is
Fuck.
executed, I just wrote a note down that I was like, okay, Max Landis, who is Heather and what did she do to you?
I mean, it feels like you're trying to settle a grudge that you had with a girl you had a crush on and who told you she was gay, either because she was gay or because she wanted you to leave her the fuck alone. And it's
Or
like,
just like somebody's shitty friend or ex-girlfriend that he knew, right?
there is a consistent theme through the oeuvre de Max Landis, which is all of his major female characters are just these annoying, shrill, occasionally like freakishly infantilized in Anna Kendrick's case and Mr. Right, which is like,
I haven't seen
goodness
that.
gracious. Nobody could have made that work or anything, but boy howdy, it takes considerable effort on your part to make me dislike Anna Kendrick as much as I dislike her in that film because I like her a lot. But wow. And this is one of the most like, it's obviously like cartoonish. It's meant to be over the top and how evil this character is. You're clearly trying to say something with this movie. It's called Me, Him, Her, for fuck's sake. And I get the interior struggle of one of these characters in bits and starts, kind of, and the villain of the movie is directly related to her, and it's really more just her trying to grow a backbone because like the magical realism of the movie, which it kind of has, is that she has this like grip on her, like this sort of magic thing that makes her and it's like, yeah, it's clearly like a metaphor for an abusive relationship, but it's also just kind of, I'm waiting for you to deliver what you think about this and stop like it is a pure portrayal that says nothing about its own subject matter. It's very weirdly hollow and it becomes impossible to like judge or interact with. I don't understand any isolated element of this movie, honestly.
No, not really. It's just like really nothing about this congeals, right? There's a
No.
narrative beat that I think could be really great where Corey's parents call Brendan's parents, or maybe it's the other way around. One of their parents call the other dude's parents and tells them that Brendan is gay. And so what happens is that Brendan and Corey are having lunch with Brendan's parents. This is how it goes. And his parents just like say something about him being gay because they're just like, great, you're out finally, because we've always known you were gay.
Mhm.
And so everybody, because that's the ultimate like running gag of the movie is that everybody knows that Brendan is already gay, which again, I've already said, deflates a bunch of narrative tension that you actually could have had. But then that scene gets truncated with the one funny line in the movie, which is when Scott Bakula just says, no man has a friend.
No man has a friend. That's a really good line. Like, men don't have friends. Like, it's.
Yeah, like if the movie was a bit weirder and we just had more stuff like that, I would probably like it more. But all that comes through, that's the only time that it comes through in a way that isn't Doug Walker making fun of TMZ level jokes.
Oh, it's that tenor too, specifically of the like the hyperactive kind of overacted as well. Like
There's
it's
a news segment that's edited. There's what's supposed to be an actual news segment
oh
about
God.
Brendan being gay that is
Yep.
edited like one of those beats in the Doug Walker AI video.
It's like from a distance, you can sort of understand this movie working in like really really broad strokes. It's like if you can get this movie's wavelength if Max Landis is pitching it to you. But the
Hmm.
actual act of watching it is kind of like watching a series of vaguely disconnected skits and bits. And I don't know, again, what is the theme of Me, Him, Her exactly? It's about
It's
finding out
about
who
be
you
yourself.
are.
It's a Disney
Question
Channel
mark.
original
And
movie, be yourself
uh,
level crap.
look, this is not a bad idea for a movie on paper, especially when it's just like, consider for a moment that we live in a world that is divorced from Me, Him, Her several years in the future. Some of the social aspects of that movie have, like it's a bit less of a out and out problem, I would say, like just because it feels like people are a little bit more comfortable with discussing their sexuality than they were back then. However, we still do get people, Pedro Pascal, who are definitely. Do you not know this, Jen?
I don't know where you're going with this. Like I
Okay,
don't get me
I'm
wrong.
saying,
I'm tapped in on Pedro
yeah.
Pascal queer baiting discourse. Don't get me fucking wrong. I just don't know where you're going with this.
The thing is that this is a problem that still does exist in some capacity. Like, despite the fact that we have, moved on a little bit, progressed a little bit forward, is that like the idea of being queer in an industry that is not explicitly and 100% queer friendly is going to create problems for you. You don't accomplish anything, however, by immediately sidelining the character that this is happening to and just kind of wraparounding it at the very end of just being like, and now this problem is also solved. And you're like, okay, but
Well,
you
like the
have
one
to
thing that they do correctly is that they execute the final beats of Brendan's arc pretty
decently.
effectively, which is that, he has to have the realization that he is comfortable with his sexuality, and then he goes to the red carpet and, he's getting interviewed by somebody and he just goes, "Yeah, I'm gay." Like
Mhm.
that's the good narrative beat. Shame about everything you did to build up to that, which was fucking nothing.
That's and you know what? Speaking of nothing, we haven't even talked about the worst part of this movie. The fucking climax. The
Oh God.
never ending fucking climax, man. And
This movie ends with a sword
You
fight,
can
Jake.
you not just see Landis in the middle of like pitching his screenplay and being like, it's a romantic comedy, and then it ends in a sword fight? Like, it's such a like big brain fucking like, oh wow, this'll really get them idea.
Wow.
And it it is so apparent that Max has so little of an understanding of what makes a story coherent or interesting beyond the pitch because he clearly ran out of movie and just said, okay, we just need to have this action scene, this sword fight go and on and there's no joke. It's just there's a sword fight happening now and the
And they're
lesbians are
breaking
fighting,
things.
guys. They're fighting. It's bizarre and it
It's
lasts
strange.
a long time,
This
especially
is
when you
not
get
a
to
long
movies.
movie, but
No.
this sword fight scene goes on for an obscene amount of time.
So I guess at the end of the day, what happens when you give somebody who's good at like Max Landis missed his calling as being like, first of all, he just should have gone to business school. He should have been in advertising because that's clearly where his skill set lies. But it's also like it's like the final boss of Nepo babies because he still gets to wear the skin of the underdog when making a movie like this because it clearly looks like an indie movie and he did the marketing himself. He gets to assume all of these signifiers that are just like, look at how hard I'm trying and how far I've come and how talented I am. Everything feels less like a beat for its own organic sake. It feels like all of his movies end up being very weirdly just reflections of him, and not in the way that like, oh, you can tell that the same person wrote all of these. It's like it always loops into being like a narcissistic affirmation of the status quo of whoever is closest to what Max Landis thinks he is. In Victor Frankenstein, it's just like, Frankenstein is movies. That's like the analogy that they're going for. It's like the artistic process or whatever the fuck. And it's like
Oh
all of these
God.
movies are like you can very clearly be like subtextually all these movies are about how Max Landis is secretly a genius or is just a normal average everyday guy who's trying to figure out everything about himself, even though there's nothing interesting about him. The main character of this is a stand-in with no personality.
Yeah, this Corey character is not good. Not
Nothing,
good.
nothing
Not
going on.
interesting. There's nothing to him. He occasionally makes a couple of weirdly homophobic jabs. Where
Very, very weird.
he's got one bit where he's got one line where he's just like, and Griffin's a fairy. Isn't that like a funny pun because his name is Griffin, but he's gay, so he's a fairy, right? Isn't that funny?
And
Oh,
there's
and
not
everybody in the
even
movie talks like that, where they're like, they say the punchline and then they say how funny the thing that they just said was. I feel
I
this way,
hate
but I don't know if I feel this
screenwriter
way. But
brain
I'm saying that
so
I feel this way
much.
because I made a like it's a lot of runaround dialogue.
Overwritten.
Yeah.
His dialogue is like that's why they get changed so much. His dialogue is so fucking overwritten that only he wouldn't change it. And that's why you're like everything about this whole thing makes sense. So naturally, Max Landis gets Me Too'd into oblivion, and everybody is like, I'm not going to work with him again. And he makes this psychotic video slash web thing about the music of Carly Rae Jepsen. Also, genuinely
What?
such a bizarre. Yes, he if you look into this project, this is a rabbit hole, man. Like, it is like you are discovering a man who has just discovered that songwriting exists. And it's like, oh, like he's putting together the lyrics of Carly Rae Jepsen as though it is this conspiratorial thing where it's just like, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but like every songwriter writes songs. Like, I'm not obviously not dissing Miss Carly Rae Jepsen. I love her music naturally. But, dude, do you not know that all things work like this? It's very strange that you think that this is just an anomaly, that only you are special enough to have noticed in this one very special artist. Like, if I were Carly Rae Jepsen and stumbled upon his weird website thing for that, I would have called out a restraining order. Like, it's,
That's some perfect blue shit.
oh boy, is
Ooh,
it.
doggy.
It really is. And
So shout out to one of my professors back in undergrad who the first day of class when we were talking about poetry was just like, yeah, before you came into my life, I missed you so bad. That's one of the best things ever written. Before you, he would just like he would just like say it over and over again until one of us like understood it. Why does that line work? Before you came into my life, I missed you so bad. Why does it work?
that's,
It was just
you
like,
know
bro.
what? Chad move, honestly. I love that for them. And you would think that him kind of toiling away in his own corner of the internet is the last thing we're going to hear from him. But boy howdy, do I have an epilogue for you.
Yeah, can we get back to this unmade screenplay that you were talking about, the
Well,
deeper movie?
yeah, is that this was a really interesting screenplay. I don't know how it holds up. I just remember being like, wow, this is one of those movies that kind of takes place in mostly in one location. And it was a very surreal, very out there, very different thing than Max had dealt with before. And I was like, huh, I like this idea, if nothing else. It's movies like Locke, the Tom Hardy movie that takes place entirely in a car.
Yeah,
Good
good
movie.
movie.
Good, check that out. So it's not the same screenplay, but there's one screenplay of Max's that still exists out in the ether that is also a contained thriller-ish movie. And it actually, before 2020, gets picked up and people start making it. However, the news about Landis reaches the director and star of the film, and they immediately disavow their connection to Max Landis, say the script was completely rewritten, and that they have severed all thing with this. And we thought that the movie might not even get made, but it was released during COVID in 2020.
Oh, you talking about Shadow in
And
the Cloud?
I am
I know about, I've
talking
never seen the movie, but I know it exists.
So, Shadow in the Cloud is a movie directed by Roseanne Liang, a woman. So, like, this is in the midst of a lot of turmoil and stuff. So, like, they clearly, as a PR move, needed to be like, no, we are not attached to this man. And I have it on good authority, at least. Again, shout out to Esther of Get Cynical, who read the screenplay for Shadow in the Cloud, that the people part of this movie assured was completely rewritten is exactly the same as the movie that ends up getting made. It is exactly the same,
No fuck,
apparently.
they lied about
They
reworking the
they
script.
straight up lied. And here's the thing, Jen, is that this movie is about Chloe Grace Moretz. This is a World War II like fighter plane. I watched this movie like a couple days after because it was the only chapter of the Max Landis saga that I had not experienced for myself. And Chloe Grace Moretz is the only female fighter pilot who is stuck in this vessel and is constantly communicating with people in like her little headset that are all men and they're all sex pigs because girl boss, girl power. She's so cool and she
Thanks,
like
Max.
like dialogue that's literally just like you can't fly a plane, you have a vagina. Like it's bad. It's real bad dialogue. And what happens with this movie floored me to a level I did not think possible because the movie is about her like helping the guys from afar and like trying to make this journey and she's stuck in this confined location like deeper and I don't hate that. Like again, that's a concept for a movie I think is really interesting. And hell, I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's cool. And like this movie was whatever for a while. And I was just like, okay, yeah, whatever. There's some backstory shit happening. There's some stuff with Chloe Grace Moretz and a baby and I'll address that when it's relevant. But what happens in this movie is that it's a normal World War II like fighter thing, but there's like something is being hinted at. There are like tiny little details of the things you're picking up. It's just like, what's going on in the background here? Why do they show that shot for that long? And a gremlin, a fucking gremlin, appears above her on another plane and then gets onto her plane to try and sabotage it. It is just like they barely even try to explain why this gremlin is here and like how it exists. It's a big like, oh, it's a World War II movie and then there's a monster. Ugh.
Well, yeah, it's like what if gremlins, which were, made up for World War II industrial like safety posters, what if they were real and they were actually trying to kill you?
Basically, and they like there's like a
That's the
hint.
Landis pitch version of it, right?
Well, there's like a little hint. They do this little like slideshow thing at the very beginning where they make a joke about like a gremlin, but it's like it's clearly meant to like not be something that you think about. And then they actually follow it up and it becomes a kind of like the end of Alien sort of thing where Moretz is trying to like outmaneuver this thing and it like mimics several shots that on God are from the Twilight Zone movie, the one his father made. And
Oh,
here,
now I see
here's
where you're going with
here's
this.
something really funny: is that Max is an ardent defender of his father, constantly talking about the horrible anguish he suffered and the public shaming that happened to him. Which, frankly, look, I don't doubt that this is possible, but so many of the stories that he shared are like nobody walks up to John Landis on the street and recognizes who he is and goes, the helicopter. Like that's literally like a story that he told that happened. And I'm like, that didn't fucking happen. Shut up. And he's like, he is very much in his father's corner, like supporting him and being like, that it wasn't his fault and all of this stuff. Very outspoken about that. And he is directly homaging the movie in which this happens. That's a girl boss movie that this fucking Me Too'd ass schmuck wrote that they had to distance themselves
And
from.
this is all stuff that's
And
in the script, right? They didn't
this is
make the movie
in
this
the
way by
script.
accident.
This is in the script. And the fucking end of this movie, like it goes on for so goddamn long. It has a third act that feels like it's an hour fucking long. And then like it ends It
This
ends
movie's
on a Kate Bush
83
song.
minutes for the people that don't know.
It ends on a Kate Bush song that's like a girl boss anthem with like military propaganda. And it's just like, this is like the most morally objectionable, like every step along the way, you did something disgusting with this for
Oh man.
why are you homaging the fact that your father is responsible for the death of multiple people? Like, can you imagine how psychotic you have to be like, yeah, man, I'm definitely, like, even if you are totally on the side of your dad, you write a movie that's gonna make people think, like,
It's like if
dude,
RFK Jr. directed JFK.
it's like, and the only thing that like that separates it is that it's just like the gremlin on the wing, the famous part of the Twilight Zone movie. That wasn't the John Landis one. It was the George Miller one. But it's still the fucking movie where people died, motherfucker. Like, what are you doing?
Right,
The
right, right.
idea of alluding
You're
back
saying
to
it's
it.
weird that you're attributing a different segment of the
Yeah.
movie,
Well,
basically.
it's
Yeah.
weird that you're attributing a different segment and still attributing the movie at all. Like, neither of those decisions actually make any sense in a way that I find it's such a baffling act of narcissism that it's just like, if I ever had my doubts about maybe the validity of the accusations against the man, I saw Shadow in the Cloud and was like, nope. Not that I needed to know, not that I like needed the reassurance, obviously, but like, wow, it's real bad. It's a really bad movie. Like, even if you take
Oof.
away the stuff that, you could find in poor taste, it's very lazy. It's very just, you watch it and you're waiting for, like, it feels, you can feel the Department of Defense subsidies that went into funding this movie's budget. And it's like, ugh, gross. Get Kate Bush out of your mouth. It's, ugh. I, I am so sorry that I made you aware of all of this.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is the best thing that you could have done to me to get me to learn about this was to show me this. Because if you had tried to get me to watch like those fucking Superman videos, I probably would have killed you. And
Yeah,
here's
again,
my thing.
no.
This is a review of Me, Him, Her. At
Yep,
the end of the day, I just should say I find Me, Him, Her unremarkable.
there's just nothing
It
about it, you know?
inexchangeably mediocre, right? It has a couple things that make it uniquely bad that go beyond, right, just the fact that Max Landis made it, right? The way
Mm-hmm.
that some of his sensibilities are on display don't impress.
Nah,
But I just find the movie overall unremarkable and kind of limp and not even like bad enough to really offend me apart from
no.
no, not even I shouldn't even
On
like
some level, I
I
do
can't
think the
even find
film,
a specific beat where I was just like, oh yeah, I'm offended by that because it's so anything that anybody could find offensive is obvious and cliche offensive, right? There's no
yeah,
nuance to like his lesbophobia.
if
It's
if
just,
you're
oh
offended
man,
by it, it
my
feels like you're
bisexual
taking
girl,
bait.
my bisexual girlfriend's ex is a big monster piece of shit, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, I also went to college.
It's it's a movie that like I can't even really say that like I hate it either because it implies that I have strong feelings towards it, but I do have like a genuine repulsion to it just because, especially when you're a Nepo baby, it's just like, just try harder than this. It's like, this is just a movie that feels useless, which is like the worst thing a movie can be in a roundabout way. And it's like, I mean, it is simply something that if I did not have to come up with ideas to discuss with on this show, I would have never fucking thought about this movie ever again in my life. Never would have thought about a single moment of it. And in many respects, that's kind of a lot worse than movies I hate. Like, at least I remember the movies I hate.
Like I said, I've seen Chronicle. I will ride for Chronicle. I
Yeah,
haven't seen any of Max Landis's his other movies, and I probably won't, just because I don't think there's anything
I
there.
I would be disappointed in you if you did.
If I watch American Ultra, it will be more out of curiosity to see like that story itself because I think that's an interesting premise for a movie.
hmm
But I'm never gonna watch fucking
Matt
Bright. Who do you think
Max
I am?
Landis has like a weird fascination with the CIA. Like they always worm their way into his
Probably
shit.
because of the involvement of the CIA in his
Mm,
father's life.
you know what? That might have something to do with it. That might. But like it's so funny that it's like they all involve the CIA, but they like always portray the CIA as like the way a 12-year-old boy sees them. It's like, oh, they're cool government agents and they got a gun and they're cool. It's infantile. It's kind
It's
of
very
funny.
elementary.
Yeah, like Me, Him, Her is kind of light years ahead of something like Bright. But if you ask me which one, like you have to watch one of these two movies right now, I'd probably pick Bright just
I would
because it's
rather
just
watch
like
Bright just because
because it's
Bright is
like
funny.
yeah, you can like dig into that. You can say something about Bright. Like what do you say about Me, Him, Her other than like this is like a privileged college student film but with like a bit more money, I guess. It doesn't even look interesting. That's the weird
No,
thing is that it has a lot of color, but no aesthetic,
it's
you
got no
know?
visual style to any of it.
It's very flat. It's very like every shot is shot in like just complete focus. It's very like, and I'm not saying you got to be fucking David Fincher. Just I don't
Give
know.
me something.
I mean, like, did you even have a focus puller on set?
Because
Like
like compare this to a movie like Clerks, which I watched for the first time this year, completely like
immensely charming film.
independently of anything. I just finally sat down and watched Clerks. And that's a movie that has a visual style that came from its budget, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason why Clerks looks the way that it does, is because they have to shoot it in a real gas station. But that gives it a texture and a sense of
Yeah.
like tactile place and time to both the gas station and the video store that like this movie does not have any of that.
And make no mistake, Clerks is also a movie that's very much a young college age guy movie. It's like it's one of those things, but like it's charming. Like I can go back and watch Clerks and have a good time with it and be like, "Wow, I appreciate the scrappiness of this. I appreciate the again that it has personality and that it is,
And
you
there's
know,
novelty to the dialogue of Clerks that
yeah.
nothing here is
Oh,
novel at
like
all.
Kevin Smith has again, dude whose stock has dropped a lot. Kevin Smith is 90 times the writer that Max Landis is. Like far and like Chasing Amy, maybe a weird kind of dated movie, and especially with like some of its sexual politics. It's so much more fascinating and like actually still legitimately like that's a good movie. It's still a pretty
Yeah,
good
it's a
movie,
fascinating movie.
especially when you add the context of just like yeah, a very straight man wrote this movie, but it's still there are things you can say about it.
You feel
Me,
the
him, her
effort
is
with Chasing Amy about like trying to say something about relationships in general,
people.
not just the central dynamic, right? He's trying to say something larger about relationships in a postmodern kind of detached generation that he was existing in at the time because it's about a bunch of people who meet because of their fucking job first and foremost, right? That's what that movie's really about is the kind of insularity of dating in your field
But Jen,
more than
LA is
anything
weird.
else.
But
Huh?
Jen, LA is weird. Isn't it so weird?
Isn't this so weird?
It's so strange. It's so kooky.
LA is,
Fuck LA.
I don't know, man. I watched The Valley. I know LA is weird.
I get enough of a dose of LA from frequent guest on this channel, Cole, and that is exactly as much LA as I need in my life. Love you,
I watched The
Cole.
Valley with my friends who are big like Vanderpump Rules heads, and so that's an interesting. But that's all I need. That's like my one reality TV show is those two.
You get your fix and you move on. Like I
Yeah.
don't. Nobody needs Max Landis's vision of LA. Like
No. No
this
more.
is by some distance, this is the thing that between both of our recommendations is by far the most useless thing we've talked about. Like, I don't even know how that's going to translate into a rating. I truly had no clue what this would end up resulting in with you. I just wanted to peel back into one of the most unflattering parts of my past.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate the gambit, not so much for the game itself, but for for your own reputation. The gambit of your own reputation that you've staked on this segment.
Listen, we can't all choose our artistic hyperfixations, and sometimes they're attached to people who just you just don't care for them.
Not anymore. What do I exactly use for my metric by which I want to rate this? I think that's the
You
frustrating thing
could
that I'm
tell me
finding.
any rating, and I'd be like, "Yep, that sounds right."
The frustrating thing about this is that I can't find any reason by which I would rate this at all by the standards of this show. You know what I mean? Like, so here's what I'll do. I will just tell you like what I would give this on Letterboxd is probably a 3 out of 10, which
That's what
for
I
the
have it
purp
at.
yeah, for the purposes of this show, that's probably
You
3
know
on the
that we are
bad
in
on the
dire
bad.
straits when we have to resort to fucking math when this shit happens. Because
Well, I just
neither of us like rating things. We
no,
don't
that's not
enjoy
what I
it.
mean. The math doesn't go perfectly one to one what my letterbox score for this movie is, and then the
No.
points that I'm giving you for this show. I'm just saying that's the only thing I can think by which to measure it for the purposes of how we usually do this, you know?
Hmm.
And so yeah, I think you just get 3 points for this because the only thing that I'm gonna remember about this movie is that I thought it would just kind of sucked. And I've liked talking about I liked talking about Max Landis and learning about Max Landis, but watching this movie didn't tell me anything I didn't already know about this fucking guy.
If anything, it serves as a great method of confirmation bias. That's about it.
Yeah.
You watch it and you're like, this is definitely a movie a sex pest would make. Not even in its bad qualities. It's just like, yeah, uh-huh. This, that, yeah, that checks. That's a way you can feel about something. So,
Men don't have friends.
men don't have friends.
I shouldn't point out the only other line in this movie. There were 2 lines in this movie, aside from that one, that got a laugh out of me. And one was I'm a penis.
Just, I'm a penis.
I'm a
And
penis.
so you are.
And then the other one was, I think your arms are a little too short to box with God. Because
That is good. That's
Haley
good.
Joel Osment is really funny in this movie.
Bro,
I will
like,
give him that.
and for what reason? Like, he brought it.
He
And
brought it, but
like,
for why?
why? Yeah, exactly. It's just like the only reason is that I know that he's also kind of in the internet sphere as like a guy who shows up on podcasts and is very friendly with people. Like, for all intents and purposes, Haley Joel Osment seems like the kind of person that Max Landis so desperately wants to cosplay as. Like a generally likable guy who's kind of like bigger career stuff is kind of behind him now and just sort of does whatever he wants with his friends.
I think his like pivot to more big budget podcasting, but still just uploading it to his fucking YouTube channel with a stupid ass name is
And
pretty
wait a
indicative
minute,
of that.
wait a minute. He's in Tusk. It's connected to
Max
Kevin
Landis
Smith.
is in Tusk,
No,
or
Haley Joel
oh yeah,
Osment. He
yeah,
plays a podcaster in it.
yeah. Well, I was talking about Max Landis, like what he's
And
doing on his channel now.
who's in Tusk, Jen? Justin
Justin
Long!
Long!
Let's go! We made
I
it!
cheered like a sports announcer the first time that he showed up in this show for a good reason.
What
Oh
up,
man.
faggot? Every time. Every time I see. God damn it. Fucking
What
shit.
happened to your camera?
It died. I reclaimed it, bitch. Okay.
We're talking about, for my segment, we're talking about the 2023 season of television Goosebumps, a soft reboot slash, we'll call it an adaptation of the series of children's novels published by R.L. Stine all throughout the 90s. And I'll refresh some folks who might have missed the end of the segment of last episode. Goosebumps is what got me into horror. right?
Ditto.
I was the kid in elementary school who read all the Goosebumps books. Everybody knew this about me. The librarian ordered Goosebumps books that we did not have on my behalf when I was a kid because I just like I was so deep in it. So R.L. Stine taught me to love horror, and so he is one of my like most respected writers to ever live. Him and like Catherine Applegate, who wrote the Animorphs books, are just like people that I give tons of credit to for getting a generation of kids into genre fiction in very different ways, which could only be, obviously could only be possible by the good work of the Scholastic Company, which still, does good work to this day. And
I knew I had this
hey,
on the shelf somewhere. I also
holy
have some
crap.
K.A. Applegate shit right here too. So
That's awesome.
copy, paste.
I love that. So, okay. The reason that I wanted to talk about this show in particular is because I just kind of found this on a whim and watched it for no real particular reason. I'm just curious about Goosebumps, and I go back and I watch episodes of the old 90s show all the time because I just
Hmm.
think that show is so charming. And again, my first
Very.
real experience with like horror filmmaking was the Goosebumps show.
Yep.
Like that's where I got my first taste of my love of horror movies was watching Night of the Living Dummy 3 after dark on a Saturday night on my parents' couch.
Were
Like,
you super skittish?
no, I never really was particularly skittish. I was always like afraid of getting into horror movies because I thought I would be, but I've always had a pretty thick skin to like my entry level stuff that I watch. Like I said, I watched The Shining when I was like 14, and even though I didn't get all the things that made that movie scary, I was surprised that I wasn't as scared as I thought I was going to be. You know?
Yeah, I get you. I on the other hand, like I got into this stuff when I was like a little bit younger and like I had crippling nyctophobia. Like I had a nightlight for way longer than most kids probably had one. And horror movie trailers used to scare me senseless. I have a core memory inside me of seeing the trailer for the Friday the 13th remake, a movie that is not scary at all, by the way. Like, I don't even think its fans would tell you that that's a scary movie. But I saw that and I was in my living room at midnight on the couch and I didn't move for hours. It terrified me. I mean, like it was bad, mainly because, it was back when I was raised with like my grandparents. I was brought up conservative Baptist and like I was shielded from so much shit. And then, oddly enough, it's when I went to Catholic school and then discovered Stephen King on the Bookmobile, and then sort of like all of the Goosebumps stuff that I had acquired but didn't really delve into. Like it was a little bit delayed for me, but like Goosebumps was certainly like I would only watch episodes of the show if I was around other people because, then I wasn't scared. But like if they were coming on TV, I changed that shit instantly, despite the fact that I was watching fucking Law and Order. Don't America is a fucked up country, man. I can't explain any of this shit. It's just how I was.
And so I ended up being really impressed with this show because Goosebumps has kind of had I wouldn't call it a renaissance, but it's always had people kind of riffing on it in ways that are interesting to me. There was a movie back in 2015 that had
Jack
a
Black
pretty
vehicle
similar, yeah, that had a pretty similar premise to this where Jack Black plays
plays
R.L.
R.L. Stein.
Stein. And the
Yeah.
premise is that Dylan Minnette from 13 Reasons Why is the main kid in that movie.
Poor
And
bastard.
he moves in next door to R.L. Stein, and the whole movie is about what if the books were actually like containing real life malevolent entities that you can accidentally like unleash onto the
Hmm.
world. And so it's a mashup of a bunch of Goosebumps iconography in like a modern urban setting. And the whole movie is about it's kind of like a Jumanji movie where it's like we got to get
Yeah.
everything back
I've
where
been
it
told
was.
it's quite charming. I haven't seen it
It's a
myself,
charming
though.
little movie. It's directed by Rob Letterman, who is one of the main like creators of this
Saw that name.
show. So once I saw that his name was on this, I thought, okay, this is the guy that did the movie. He's probably going to have some ideas going on under the hood because it was developed by him and Nicholas Stoller, who's done some different things. The showrunner, Hillary Winston, I'm not really familiar with her work, but the thing that makes this season in particular interesting is that it's taking a lot of cues from like ABC family dramas and
Oh yeah.
just putting Goosebumps shit in it. I think one of the most admirable things that I can talk about with this show is that it is a show about teenagers and their parents and all the drama that goes on between them, where both sets of characters are equally interesting to watch.
That's a good way of
Where
describing it.
there's a plot that develops as you go through the episodes between the parent characters of all our teenage characters that culminates in this one kind of climactic episode, the eighth episode, where all these characters kind of come together for the first time with all the realization of all the plot that's been happening up until this point, and it ends on a really cathartic note. And so what this show is kind of doing is, again, a similar thing to what the 2015 movie is doing, which is that it's taking a bunch of the Goosebumps iconography and using it to tell a new kind of story, which is told through a kind of season-long mystery of like what's really going on as these different, Goosebumps iconography objects are thrown at this cast of teenage characters. So, Jake, start us off. What did you think this show was going to be like? What was your impression of the first episode?
I don't really think I had much in the way of expectations when it came to what this was going to be. I just kind of figured it would be whatever an updated modern take would be on the 90s show, which I am very familiar with. I talked about in the last episode in our little cliffhanger bit about watching a lot of those when I was in high school just because of the novelty of them. And yeah, I found the Goosebumps, show very charming. It's that there's something so quintessentially Canadian about the production of that show, man. Like it's like you can tell so many other shows were also shot on like the lots that they used for that. Like it has such a specific feel to it that is a bit lost these days that I get, really nostalgic for. And it's like I don't necessarily know how I would uphold the virtues of that show because again, it's cheesy as all shit. It's cheap
It's a
as
thing that
hell.
it's a
It's
thing that I have a lot of nostalgia for, but
yeah.
I'll say that showing this some episodes of that show to some friends of mine for the first time, including my partner, I was I'm taken aback by how effective some of the filmmaking in some of those episodes can be, right? The thing
It has
about
moments.
Goosebumps, the secret sauce of Goosebumps, and this applies to this show as well, is that it is about a lot of silly things that are taken seriously for the purposes of who the audience is, right? Because like if you're a kid and there's a doll in your attic that you think is alive, that is scary, even if it has a goofy voice.
Oh, for sure. Let me fix my fucking camera here for a moment. God damn it.
Like that 90s show has some of that appeal where even in its like hokey acting in some of it, right? The concepts are always treated as serious and as like dangerous threats for our characters. And so that makes it scary when you're watching it as a kid, even if the filmmaking is mostly very vanilla for the purposes of not scaring the kids too much, which is, I think an admirable line to try to walk for the purposes of that being your audience. I was thinking back to what we talked about in the Bleach video of like, we don't let things that are for kids be weird and messy and strange anymore. It's all just like boilerplate nonsense. Whereas like Goosebumps is weird. Episode to episode, premises of Goosebumps change in terms of their like scale of absurdity dramatically. Of like, what if there was a camera that told you how
Killed
you were going to
you.
die? Yeah, what if there was a camera that told you how you were going to die? Versus what if we spend 3 episodes on a Jumanji riff where they get sucked into a board game and have to deal with the guy who runs the evil board game town?
The evil board game town. Whatever. You're gonna have to
It's
watch me
okay.
in
We can.
144p.
What happened to your
Okay.
camera?
I have no idea. It's just the USB dongle on this fucking thing is so I hate Max so much, man. I fucking Anywho.
Up
So
close and personal for this episode of
yeah, I
Jen
know.
and
Sorry, you
Jake
can see
Talk.
all of you can count the pores on my face. God damn it.
At least
Um,
now we're even.
so I guess my expectation was I needed I wanted to know how they were going to modernize the formula because the formula of the original show is very 90s. It's very like it's those adaptations of the books are like pretty remarkably honest from what I remember. Like there is a certain something that is lost in translation because I do actually find R.L. Stine to like for what he does, he's very good at it. Like when you write 100 of those novels, you're going to at least accidentally get good at a couple of those techniques that you start employing. And so, there is something about it. And also, you're younger when you have read the thing, so they're probably a bit more effective. But there is, again, there is like kernels of genuine good horror in some of these things. Like there is some uncanny imagery that kind of sticks with you that some episode premises that are just so unbelievably ludicrous that you will remember them for all of the right and wrong reasons. So this opening on a huge drone shot was like whiplash to me. I was just like, whoa, I am not used to Goosebumps looking expensive in any context. Like, it's just very strange to be like, oh, this isn't, shot like booty. Interesting. And this starts off and it feels like the production of it all is super slick. It's very modern looking. It is very much, it has the budget of a decently sized streaming TV show for whatever you imagine that being. So there is polish when it comes to the filmmaking and everything here. And it sort of starts in a way that kind of, I won't say it's kind of hyperlink, but it does kind of keep redoubling down on like the same day from different characters' perspectives. In the first couple of episodes, you get to see some kind of background players that sort of show up and it kind of like adds context. Again, we keep coming back to the fact that
The
we're finding
Halloween
the
party.
structure of the Halloween party is kind of the focal point where everybody kind of meets together and a lot of different things happening. And there is some like well laid sort of hints and stuff about like the time travel episode, for example. Like if you're looking kind of closely, you can spot hints earlier on of that happening in the background without it actually like outright telling you. So there's some actual like implementing of ideas that I find to be particularly subtle. But the overall like tone of this is very, you're focusing on these high school kids and it's very, yeah, it is kind of like an ABC sort of family drama that honestly, it's probably a little bit closer to it's kind of going for a Stranger Things. The thing it really reminded me of,
Yeah.
honestly, was another creation of R.L. Stine. Is that this really reminded me of the Fear Street trilogy, which is a set of
Mm.
movies that came out a couple of years ago. That I mildly enjoyed those. I thought that they were a good little time. I know everybody didn't really like care for some of it, but I was just like, I don't know. Some of this homage is cute. Some of the filmmaking is nice, and a lot of the talent in it is pretty solid. I didn't think it was remarkable, but it had personality, and I had a good time with it. And there was an interesting premise there, and I kind of liked the sort of the interlocking structure of how the trilogy goes back and forth in time. And there is kind of an element of that here. You do sort of go back and have some flashbacks in the later episodes that kind of it did give me Stephen King's It vibes occasionally,
Yeah.
like, the going back and forth, showing the history of this character who keeps kind of popping up. You see, like, the first thing is you see this character and you're instantly like, oh, it's the bullied loser character. He's got like messy, kind of emo-y, curly hair, and you're just like, what's gonna happen to this dude? And he dies immediately, and you're just like, oh, okay, I know what you are. And this is going to be a very special episode of the show
Oh
because
no.
I didn't really like this very much.
Oh man. Well, okay, let's talk about it.
I it's so difficult to try and delineate why I enjoy things like this, but not this. I will say one thing that definitely got on my nerves a lot is something that the Fear Street trilogy was very guilty of too, but this ratcheted up considerably, and like every time it happened, I was like, hmm. And you know what? I'm not even going to lay the blame of it on this show because it's executives that are doing this, and I know that it is. The needle drops.
Oh,
We need to have a
oh,
talk about the
man.
way needle drops are used in this because what shows like this do is that they know their audience very well. Like, when they drop Nine Inch Nails' Terrible Lie, they're looking at me doing that. And I get it, that's a good song. But one thing I'm slowly growing to just not be able to stand is like when the needle drops exist to be recognized and then are over. almost
Mm.
instantaneously. Like they are there so that you, the viewer, can recognize that the needle drop is there. Like there's no rhythm to how a scene is edited that complements the music. Like that's what needle drops are supposed to be. There's like a
Mm.
skillful meld here. However, when this starts with a drop of Sam Smith and Kim Petras' Unholy for some reason, I'm sure you can find
Yeah,
if you
I've got a
dig enough.
bit of a mixed bag
It's
on some of the show's
like
soundtrack.
there, and the thing is that I love the vast majority of these songs. They fucking drop I can't remember which Alice in Chains song. It's on Dirt. I don't remember. It's not Wood. It's not fuck it. It's an Alice in Chains song. There are two Nine Inch Nails songs. There's two Smashing Pumpkins songs. And like I like all of these, but they happen for like 10 seconds so that you recognize the chorus and then it just keeps going. Like there is a part where they do the Nine Inch Nail drop and then Justin Long walks into a room and just goes, "Huh, I love that song." And then the scene continues and I'm just like, and this is not a big thing, but it is something that irked me.
Yeah,
I think the best way I can put this is that I just couldn't really get into the drama of this at all. The characters here, there was just something that felt artificial about them. And I can't necessarily tell you why the artificiality that's definitely in the 90s show, like 100%, works for that, but does it like it might be the fact that there is a collision of like the polished aesthetic and the writing still being kind of similar that just kind of leads for a strange combo in my head of like trying to process this thing that I have internalized one way but is being shown to me in another. And that's more of a me problem. That's not a huge deal. But at the same time, this is a very sleek modern production. I find the filmmaking to be quite boring. The
it's
muted
a pretty
color
flat
palette,
show.
it's there are moments where I feel like some of the effects are solid. There are moments where when this show honestly one of the best elements of it is that it made me laugh a hell of a lot more than I would have expected something like this to. Like there are a lot of really solid jokes, like the setup for laying down the queer character in this where before we find out what their deal is and then an episode just literally ends with them fucking exploding and you're like, dude, what the like there's no needing to that
That's when I
whatsoever.
locked in. By the
And
time you get to the end of the second episode and that kid explodes, I'm just like, oh, I have to finish this. This is
I
going somewhere.
I completely get that too. Is that I was like, okay, I want to see where this goes. And never let it be said that I can't find good things to talk about. I think that there are select episodes and even moments of this show that really work. Particularly if I had to pick a favorite episode, the Worms episode is the one that I think is
Yes,
the best.
yes.
That concept, that was one I was unfamiliar with book-wise. I'd never read that Goosebumps premise, but there is a bit of effective drama set up with this one character who is like constantly acting out and doing like these weird stunts and just like trying
Literally,
to
the first time that
do
you see him, he bikes off a roof, eats
just
shit, looks
fucking
up, he's
like
got blood in it. He looks up, he's
his
got blood
mouth.
dripping out of his mouth. He just goes, I'm chilling.
He's this kid's got a fucking death wish. And you later find out that it's like his mom is concerned about him because she's just like there is actually a very good line that she has where it's just like when his father died, I expected him to be sad. I didn't expect him to act out. And it's like, okay, that's actually an interesting way to take like a child dealing with their grief by trying to do all of these performative stunts and have people look at them and do all of this shit and get all of this attention. And they characterize that character very well. And after he accidentally eats a worm, he starts basically just being completely unable to feel pain, like at all. And immediately, that's a deep fear of mine, is that if you lose your ability to like actually touch and feel things, then you won't be able to know if something like really horribly painful is happening to you. That's a very specific fear of mine. So that when he fucking dislocates his shoulder after jumping off the school building later in this episode, and it's just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, ah, oh God, ew, Jesus. It's really actually effective body horror without like showing something that is overtly gory, disgusting, or gross. Like that's the exact kind of stuff that I think Goosebumps is really solid at. And there is an attempt for this to sort of emotionally anchor a lot of the horror with that I think is admirable. I don't always think it's successful, but I do think it is admirable. It's best exemplified there. One that's less successful for me is the take that they do on the haunted mask. And I get where
Yeah.
they're going with it, and I actually do like that. Honestly, I kind of wish that the mask stayed not goblin gremlin-y. Like when it was just blank and it does the little smile like right after she takes it off the first time. That's the creepiest moment in the whole episode. I'm like,
Yeah, I
that's a
didn't
good
like
little
when she
moment.
like straight up turns into a goblin
It
monster. That was the
it's because it
least my
looks
least
like the
favorite part of it.
90s haunted mask one. It
Yeah.
literally just looks like that. And whenever the show kind of delves into a more actiony way to resolve its conflicts like it does in that one, it's not it doesn't really work all that much for me. And the character in which is dealing with it, like again, on paper, I get why this could work is that she is somebody who's like she's constantly on social media being a total fucking bitch ass loser to
And she
everybody,
also
making
has like
fun of
a
them.
very distant like mom.
She's and she's also kind of distant from her friends as well. Like even if she could even call them her friends, it's more of a relationship that's developed over time. But like it's something that when it's introduced to me, I'm like, okay, that's a good hook. And then the characters like actual personalities. I think these kids are good actors. Their characters just don't really ever grab me. Everybody's really thin, but like I'm at least charmed by the performances of the kids. This had this first Stephen King it problem for me. Everything with the
Oh,
adults
really?
everything with the adults, I was like, the only thing I was even moderately interested in was when the one girl first finds out that her dad is having an affair with another character's mom. Like, that's the first moment where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. But, like, the moment I saw like what like I got you get bits and pieces of this villainous character, this kid who kind of gets presaged in the opening scene. And I was like, "Oh, so he died and he probably got accidentally murdered or has this like backstory that has to deal with all of the like it's a Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the setup where, you know, all the parents did this thing to this character and now the children are reaping the sins of the parents." And that it's just one of those things that's one of my pet peeves where you spend so much time in the show waiting for characters to learn information that you already know and you're like, all right, come on, like I know where this is headed. And it just I think it was just that the plot of the show never really managed to, and I hate saying this just because like I know that this is directed at like teens and young adults. It's a definitely skewing older than 90s Goosebumps. Like this is definitely more of a I don't want to say teen, but like pre-teen, like older than 10 years old,
Yeah.
younger than 15. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of the
It's like
demographic
the
they're
My
going for.
Babysitter's a Vampire crowd.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not saying that you have to be this incredibly surprising thing, but like not every narrative beat of this show I found to be very, very predictable, which is why the exploding dude at the end of the second episode was such a breath of fresh air because I was like, I mean, how the fuck would I have ever seen that coming? Like, the introductory episode is kind of the take on Say Cheese and Die, and you keep seeing the specter of this burnt character who is just not scary. I get why maybe somebody would be scared by it, but it's just he keeps popping up. He keeps doing the thing where he shows up normal and then his face burns away and then he turns to ash and then floats away. And it's kind of the same thing over and over again. There is a kind of a moment in the first episode that does really work where it's revving up the tension of like when our football player character closes his locker and the camera that he set on fire and obliterated is staring right back at him and then he has to go back out and play the game. Like that's a really tense moment. I really like that. You don't know where that scene is exactly headed and you're just like he's trying to solve the problem, but he is constantly like everybody's just kind of pushing him forward. And I'm like, okay, this has stakes. I don't know what the result is going to be. And so when, the fate befalls him, it's like, oh, wow, okay, good moment here. And those moments just kind of get fewer and far between as the show progresses. And then when we get into, unfortunately, it's kind of like this show has the reverse Barbarian effect, where the more Justin Long became involved with the show's plot, the less interested I became in it. Because
Oh,
Justin Long,
man.
who, God bless him, is putting in work in this show. He's actually
He's
like
really funny in this.
he is I don't know what memo this dude got of just being like the horror comedy guy, but like I like that. I like Justin Long. I like
He's
when
a
he shows
perfect
up.
choice for this show and this character in this show,
And
right? Because
he
when
has
he's
a lot of physical comedy on his shoulders that he
yeah, and
handles very well.
when he gets possessed, he's walking that line that I'm describing, right? Where like the way that it's executed can occasionally appear silly, but they take it seriously with all the mechanics of the filmmaking and such, right? Where it is
Yes.
occasionally like it's weird and embarrassing that this teacher is acting like a teenager and they mind some comedy for that, definitely. But like when he's actually sitting across from the kids and like he's a direct threat to them, it's not a joke anymore, right?
Yeah,
I admire that quality of it.
he has moments where I do think that the blend of horror and comedy is actually being kind of tonally buoyant in a way that's actually kind of successful because it disarms you a bit with the comedy, but then when it'll strike a particular angle with a face or a facial expression that he makes or hold on something. And he does have a creepy factor to him. Again, Barbarian utilized this very well, except it just more leaned into his scumbag inclinations. Whereas this, it kind of like he's leering a little bit more. He's got like, again, it's a very physical performance and I like it a lot. It's just how it's implemented, like whenever it shows up and like every time it kind of like links back to Goosebumps iconography, it becomes like really predictable as to where it's going. Like it tries to synthesize the drama in ways that feel kind of new. And I appreciate that. That's a really, that's a difficult angle to strike, especially when you're trying to update something that existed in a very, very particular place and moment in time. But there was just something about it that felt kind of clumsy. Whenever the characters just kind of start running around and doing this whole sort of investigative thing, and you're just kind of waiting. Again, and this is a totally something that I am willing to say is more my issue than a piece of media's, but it's why the first fucking Nightmare on Elm Street movie frustrates the shit out of me, is that I'm constantly waiting for the characters who have all the information to tell us what that information is so that the plot can happen. Because otherwise, it just sort of feels like everything is interrupting the story from going where it's headed. Because it's constantly like you get in maybe episode 3 or 4, they mention Slappy, the dummy, the Night of the Living Dummy. And it's just like, oh, the big baddie is stuck within this and he like tried to possess this kid and that's who the parents had that like falling out with. The one interesting wrench they throw in this is that I kind of like how they make him really pathetic. Like so pathetic that it's very much like the show is like it's not really showing him that much sympathy. Like I actually like the start of his backstory episode where you see him moving into the house and you see his parents and his dad who looks exactly like Kevin from Kevin Can Fuck Himself
I
really
know. I was
distracting.
thinking about that when I was rewatching. I was like, this motherfucker looks like Eric Peterson.
He does actually, but like he actually has like a good relationship with his parents, and like that episode was the one where I was actually the most interested in the character drama because it felt like, I mean, because you know kind of where it's headed, but you don't quite understand how yet. And it seems like everybody's getting along, so you kind of want to discover the minutia of like how did these people fall out and like did these people actually end up like killing him or whatever? And it really just ends up with the fact that this kid is so fucking in his own head about everything and anxious that he just sort of interprets everyone as being so antagonistic and like kind of makes too big of a deal about it. So when he's explaining it to their kids, they're all kind of like, yeah,
Well,
and
no.
yeah,
They're all
they're just
like, yeah,
like
I don't believe you. Or
they're
even
like
if I
our
do
parents
believe
are
you,
were
like,
nicer to you than they are to us. And then he's just like, they bullied me all the time. And it's like they didn't bully him all the time. They didn't
that's a
actually do
perfect
that.
character beat, right? Where
It
like
is.
Harold is like because you see this transition, right, that that character makes from like
Mhm.
a kid who is a legitimate outsider who is in his own head about things, but who like gets invited in by some people who want to give him a chance, right? Who genuinely like him. But then Slappy fucking comes along and just like represents all of the worst like impulsive thoughts that you could ever have, and he, you know, it's a very interesting representation of like inceldom doesn't feel like a great way to describe it, but that's the way that people are
It's
going to recognize it when I explain it. So
it
I'll
is
use
it's
that
more nuanced
words.
than that though. I will
Yeah.
definitely give it that.
It's not like an internet incel like the way that you picture it, but
No,
it's like a person who has the potential to go down that route because
for
of all the
sure.
mental health proclivities that just lead you in that direction. If the wrong few things happen to you and nobody sits you down and stops you from going too far. And that's kind of what Slappy is, right? Slappy is the catalyst for the incel,
Yeah, 100%.
at least in this one particular case.
He is the voice
Or
of all, he validates
the
all the
voice for
insecurities.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He validates the insecurities.
And so like and it turns out that like what happens is like, you might interpret like, oh, did the parents like accidentally kill this guy? And like no, it actually ends up being a lot more like incidental
Yeah.
overall. But then like and I was kind of like half in half out at this point. I was like some of this is working, some of it isn't. I like how some of these concepts are executed. I like how I think some of it is a little thin. I think some of these characters can have their moments, but like there are some like there's a will they won't they romance where I was just kind of like I don't really know anything about either of you, and it just that they are characters who are most important when they have close proximity to their parents. And so when they have like a romance between
Are you
each
talking
other,
about
I'm just
Margot and Lucas? Or
is Lucas the
Margot and
football player?
Isaiah? Yeah, no, Isaiah's the football player.
Okay, yeah, the football player is the guy predominantly who after the first episode my interest in what he's got going on is a little bit less. He's kind of sidelined, but like I guess not really. But
He's kind of the comedic
where
straight man to everybody else because he gets to go through his crisis first, right? So
yes,
he gets to be like the straightforward helper after that.
and also the time loop episode does actually have like again it has that really good lead in with that ending episode stinger of the character exploding and you're like what the fuck. That is the thing that consistently gets the most laughs is that they're talking to him in one scene in a parking lot, and then out of fucking nowhere another character just takes like a baseball bat and fucking beats him over the head and he
He's
explodes.
got a metal bat.
It's and she's just like, we need to talk. And they're like, what? And it's like that kind of like absurd swinging for the fences shit, like that when it leans into really hard the absurdity of what's going on, those moments really hit. And I like how when it goes back and explains this, it's, this character who is kind of like he's trying to hit on this guy at this party, but like doesn't know anything about him. But like then the cuckoo clock time loop thing happens, and then he uses that. Like there's always a little morality play with all of these, just like the original show. Like there was always a little, tiny little kernel of a lesson in all of these things. And this is the same way. And that's probably one of the best, like effective translations. And then once we find out more about the backstory, and I'm just kind of like, this still has a couple of episodes to go. Where are we gonna go with this? The final
I'm
third of the
worried. I'm
show,
worried. I'm worried you're gonna tell me that, yeah, the third act of the show just completely fell apart for you.
I don't even know if it fell apart as much as it failed to animate me, especially in how I think I kind of discovered what it was sort of at the very end, in that they go into very, very minute detail of the backstory of Slappy and how he's created and the person who created him. It goes really far back in the past. And this is just another thing where I'm going to call back to when we were talking about Silent Hill, in that horror always works best for me when it is at its most ambiguous. And it feels like the entire final third of this show is dedicated to trying to dispel every potential mystery that is within this. And I think it's just that at the end of the day, whenever I engaged with Goosebumps that wasn't this, when it was the books or when it was the show, I was never concerned with the origin of any of the supernatural phenomenon. I didn't want it to be explained to me. Like I didn't really want to know like what the camera in Say Cheese and Die is. I didn't want to know where Slappy came from. I didn't want to, and it's so thorough, and it becomes like there's these mechanics into how like there's this little pocket dimension that they get trapped in, and there's a good little moment of them trying to like figure stuff out. There's actually a lot of good comedy bits that come from that, and Justin Long gets to be more of his own character there. I do
He's
like
doing
that
some
little
straight up
bit.
like Evil Dead 2 shit in that
Yeah.
episode, which is very funny.
And then when the characters start going out in the snow, this kind of became like watching Stephen King's Dreamcatcher. I was just kind of watching things happen, and it's not that I didn't know why. I just, there's so much effort into explaining everything, and it just keeps going. And I'm like, and the thing is, I hate saying it too, because I respect the idea of not just trying to do singular episodic ideas just exactly like the original show. It's trying to make it a big interwoven plot. And it's like all of these items are somehow related to the guy that died in some way. Like he's got the camera. And it's like, again, that's an interesting idea. It's just never what I looked for with this and this kind of horror. I wish that it played more to the strengths that it did showcase in that first couple of episodes. Even if it didn't always hit a home run, I was just way more into it when, oddly enough, it's one of those few examples where I like when something is more episodic than doing its overarching story thing. And again, the parent characters just like woof. I I didn't give a fuck about them. They were all just they were there. I was interested a little bit with the affair subplot, but like none of them there's one of them that's like being held in a psychiatric facility at the behest of another character in this, where they're like literally drugging her, and I'm just that's that's like exceptionally dark. I feel like we maybe could have done more with this, perhaps. Like maybe focus a little bit more on the internal stuff. I just it, none of this show is what I would necessarily call bad. It's just very messy. And overall it doesn't congeal for me. Like I respect the attempt, but I was very I don't want to say lost. I was just kind of like, I was waiting for a hook. I was waiting for something to be the thing that grabbed me. And it was like, I kind of got it a couple times, but it never led me anywhere. And it's kind of what made me end up preferring the Fear Street trilogy to being like,
Mhm.
that's the closest analog to something like this, in that it was like, it was just about its overarching plot. It didn't really concern itself where like, it did some character drama, but now we're getting back to the story here. And it picked a lane, I guess. This show has trouble picking a lane. And, maybe they could fix that in a second season, which I know does exist. David Schwimmer's in it, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm
they don't follow up this cliffhanger at the end of the show at all, which I think is
I
honestly
was
a pretty good idea.
I was wondering about that, because that was actually kind of the peak of my like I don't really like, they build the giant monument after they turn all the characters into the mannequins, and then they like actually the one really good moment that actually felt definitely like classic Goosebumps was just like, I mean, everybody in that town gets turned into a mannequin, they get shoved into a giant fucking column, and they all get set on fire, and there is a solid like 25-second long stretch where you're just like, oh God, all those people died. And
Yeah.
it subverts it, but still, like, again, this is for kids. I don't necessarily think that we should show, like violent immolation or anything, but like that's a good moment. This is a show that does not have teeth. And that's one thing that I think is essential when you are adapting these things, is that like every Goosebump story, no matter how goofy it is, no matter how silly or cheesy it can be, there's always one kernel of legitimate horror in it where you're like, uh, I don't. That made me feel weird. Like the haunted mask is scary just because the way that they visualize the fact that this girl can't get this mask off is like you start actually getting like the sensory, like, oh God, what if you had something attached to your
Yeah, you
fucking
start
face that
like
you just
itching
couldn't get
your
off?
clavicle.
It's just like it upsets something in you. And then there are episodes where like the one episode of Goosebumps that I remember watching it in like a hotel room once, and I can't even remember under what circumstance, but it was like this episode of Goosebumps where there was this summer camp that this character went to, and it was there's all these weird things happening, and it was one of the most like genuinely mysterious episodes of the show where you're just like, is there a monster here? Are the camp counselors like kidnapping children? Like, is there like a demon in the woods? Like, what the fuck's going on? And at the end of the episode, they just look up into the sky, and it's planet Earth as the moon.
It's a
They're on another
trial
planet.
it's a trial run for aliens to invade Earth. They are doing a
That
summer camp as boot camp for
that
aliens that are going to be
shit,
sent to Earth.
galaxy brain. That's galaxy brain levels of fucking like, I don't even know if I think that's scary. It's just awesome. Like that's a cool little bit. And this
There's
show has cool
one,
little
and
bits.
the episode that they name it after is very different and not as good, but there's one of these books called The Perfect School that's like, I'll
Hmm.
just never forget. The story starts with a kid gets into the elevator and then just slowly realizes that the elevator is moving horizontally
Oh, that's
and then
ooh.
pops out in this like other dimension where everything is black and white. It's so weird.
See,
It's so weird.
that's like Twilight Zone shit. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that like I love me some Twilight Zone. That's another thing that was like very very pivotal into getting me into horror. And I feel like that approach, like, again, you can try the overarching theme, but like when it comes to Goosebumps, its strength is in how it executes specific concepts. When it has to blend it all together, it does lose something for me. It's just,
Yeah.
it's spreading itself a little bit thin. And I hate that because, like, again, this is a very evident example of like all the actors doing a pretty solid job, especially the kids, actually. Like, I kind of thought, like, just the way they dressed the queer character, I was kind of like, this could go one way or
No,
another
he's
way.
great. They
No,
do really well with
actually a
that character.
good character who's very like, very not explicit in like orientation and gender expression, and I like the ambiguity there, and it's just not really even a thing. It's just kind of like, oh, this is who this person is, and everybody's just like, yeah, okay. And
Yeah, like
that's cool.
there's a great beat where, he's allowed to have that struggle of like being a gay kid in a small town. But
Hmm.
his friends are his friends. And so when
Hmm.
he's with his friends, he's like he is himself, he's happy, he's all that. So I liked that for that character.
For sure, for sure. And it was one of those things where like I kind of had a sinking feeling after every episode where I was just like, is this not gonna get its hooks in me? And unfortunately, around the 2/3 of the way part, I was just like, yeah, I kind of think this missed.
Mm.
And I hate saying that just because we do have a
No,
shared
don't. I
bond
mean, I
over
want to know what you
Goosebumps.
think.
Well, and I mean, this was bound to happen eventually. That said, I didn't expect this to happen very soon. So I'm kind of at a loss as to how we proceed here because I don't
Yeah,
think
what
we
do we
came up for
do?
we didn't really come up for rules if we actually, because like we talked about like, oh, we'll do something if we end up like not being able to rate or just like not enjoying or really enjoying something, vice versa, based on what we're recommended. So like, uh, uh,
How
huh.
about this? And why don't you, here's what we can do, right? What I presume this means you don't want to give this any points at all, right? To represent the schism.
Yeah,
That's
I
probably
guess
the way
so.
that we
I
should, that's
guess
probably
so.
the way that we should do it. So what I think we should do, I guess, is your reward is if you want to pick a different like orientation for the next episode than just the way that we've been going back and forth, right? Dealer's choice, perhaps. Like if you want to do the bad thing again, or if you want to do too good or too bad, right? Let's just do a wild
Okay.
card of whatever you want to do.
I I think I
Or
have a
is there something
solution.
else we should do?
I think I have a solution.
Okay.
What we'll do is that when this happens, you can get the opportunity to either switch the orientation for good and bad of the next episode to whatever you desire, or you can recommend
A secret
two
third thing.
two small things, and whatever thing gets less points will be the thing that counts.
Ooh.
Because I have been trying to figure out what of two smaller things I've wanted to recommend to you for this episode. Maybe I should do both. You could conceivably do both of mine in an evening.
Okay, well then why don't I tell you what I want you to do
Yeah,
for yours
let's
first?
let's do it's punishment time, baby. Let's go.
So am I still gonna do the bad thing?
Yep, all you.
Okay. Okay.
Mine are both going to be
Fuck.
good.
It's okay. I had God damn it. I had something. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lay any foreshadowing because you're gonna clock me if I do too much of it. I have something that if I need to cinch this with a bad wreck, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. But so I'm not
Hmm.
gonna do that for this one because I'm not gonna get to 25 even if I get the full 5 points next time. So I'm gonna do something else. And so what I think I'm gonna throw at you is I need to know. Let me start with this. How big are you into like movie musicals?
I mean, in what what are the guidelines here? Is like, do they have to exist as musicals that are also
No, I
interpreted as
guess what I
movies,
mean is like
or
anywhere on the spectrum from like The Sound of Music, like a legitimate adaptation of a Broadway
oh, I mean,
musical, to like Once, you know?
two of my favorite movies of all time are All That Jazz and Phantom of the Paradise. So,
Okay, yeah, yeah. So you see the spectrum that I'm going with here, right?
mhm,
Anything
yeah,
from like Sound of Music to Phantom of the Paradise, I would consider like a musical. I would even go so far as to call Sinners a musical if you caught me on a freaky
in
day.
pockets, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Nobody talks about it that way, but I saw my shout out to this guy Philby Bear on Blue Sky who calls Sinners a musical very adamantly, which I do agree with to some extent. I have a very particular taste for musicals and especially musical movies because I was a theater kid. So
I was spiritually.
I went through the theater kid repertoire of like stuff that was popular at the time. You know, your Book of Mormon, your Wicked, your Hamilton, which I watched not too long ago. Just got drunk at home and watched Hamilton and still had a pretty fucking good time. I think that's a pretty good show. Um,
My boy David.
my boy David, absolutely. But what I think I want to show you is the worst musical movie that I've ever seen. And I've seen some shit that like gets on my nerves, but I would never call bad, right? When it comes to this space. I see things all the time where I'm just like, yeah, it's not for me. But I see how it works. I see why people like it. It's frankly how I feel about some of the stuff that I've listed already. Like I don't like Wicked. I don't like Wicked all that much. And
I don't really either.
I don't think the Book of Mormon is very funny, but I see where people are coming from with those. But this is one where it's like everything about it was designed to make me upset and make
Mm.
me like revolt as a film viewer. So Jake, we're gonna watch the movie of Mean Girls the musical, which is just called Mean Girls.
Oh man.
And came
Oh
out
man.
in 2024. I want to say it was not too long ago.
I
But I saw this in the
remember.
theater. I went with some friends of mine. I went with a friend of mine who's a music teacher, and we have a lot of diametrically opposing tastes. But he wanted to come see this movie with all of us as like a way to do, as a thing to do when we got back from the holidays because it came out in January. So we went to see it, and I hated it. And I said, I don't know if he wants me to say his name on the show because he works in public school, but I was like, buddy, I love you. I hated every second of that. And he was like, yeah, I can see why.
And for the record, I love Mean Girls. Great movie.
I
Very
also
funny
love the
movie.
original Mean Girls. And so I want to get into not just like why is this a bad musical, but why is it a bad like remake of Mean Girls? I
Okay.
think it will be a very interesting segment and it's a very interesting movie. So
Oh, for sure. And this is a of all of the art, like we talk about a plethora of artistic mediums on this show, and like musicals are the thing I am super baby brained on it. Like very, very, very minimal knowledge on it. So I am in very uncharted waters here.
that reminds me, I need to write down like a good suggestion for a musical that I have for you that I should get to one of these days.
Fucking Streets of Fire. I've always meant to watch that. So, okay.
So what is this? What are you doing here?
Okay.
What's the
So
gambit?
I, like you in the last episode, I wanted to get into the spirit of spooky season because it is still October and Halloween is still coming up. So I have two spooky recommendations for you, two different mediums, two very essential pieces of Jake core. One
Mm,
of them is something that is like in my DNA, but I also think that like its pleasures are very simple. Like the games I've like recommended to you in the past are like Slay the Princess is super meta. It's super like it's getting at a lot of like ideas, but it's also like a visual novel. And like Detroit Become Human is this very choice based like it's those games are very they're a bit less involved than most like traditionally like mechanic driven games. This is a simple puzzle adventure game.
okay.
And the other thing is a movie. And it's a movie because it's a counter a bit to Me, Him, Her, and that this is something that is made on no money. I mean, no fucking money. And you can tell. Like, this is something with some rough production edges around it. Like, I would say that it is the movie I like the most that has the most technical problems in it. And it's like I have
Hmm.
made movies that have better sound design than this movie does.
Oh
That
boy.
said, I love it. I like, and I'm not even like, oh, it's so bad. Like, no, I think, and
Right. I hear where you're
not
going with this.
this movie to this day has the scariest scene I have seen in any film. To me, it's very personal. It's very like, it's not overt. It's very subtle. I would be even shocked if you could call it after seeing it, but I want to talk about it. But there is an independent film that I watched years ago, found it online somehow, and I shared it with a bunch of people. And like, it's something that if you have ever made no budget films, you know that this took effort and there is a lot of shit in it that is really fascinating and that I think is super cool. It is a film called They Look Like People.
Oh, I've heard of this.
I love this movie. I've seen like I watch it every couple of years and expect to be like, ah man, this doesn't. And every single time I'm like, oh, there is this movie has many issues, but its core is so strong as a piece of horror that I genuinely it's not only is it good and effective, it's there are parts of it I would even classify as being like moving. I have a real affinity for this movie and I would love an avenue to discuss it. Every person I've showed it to has kind of had an identical reaction of just being like, yeah, this has a lot of issues, but like the charm and the heart of this is so overwhelming, I can't ignore it. And
Hmm.
it's a like 80-minute movie. Can find it easily. And I want to see if you can guess what you think I think is the scariest
The
scene in the
scene
movie.
is, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll try to pick it
So,
out.
the video game was weird because I was playing this game just because I play it. It's one of the games that like if you blindfolded me, I could probably beat two games blindfolded. One of them is Pokemon Emerald because of course it is. The other is a GameCube launch title called Luigi's Mansion. This is a game that
Huh.
has been largely not forgotten because it has sequels, but this is a game that is very different from where its sequels go and has a lot of simple pleasures to it and is it's very different from anything Nintendo have kind of made. And it's about atmosphere. Like my only request when you play Luigi's Mansion, which it's very easy to emulate because everything in the game's pre-rendered, so you can basically play it on any device fathomable. That I recommend playing this game with headphones of some kind. Listen to
Mm.
the sound design. This is one of my favorite games ever, and it is a game that is again, it's very simple, it's very easy, and if you know what you're doing, you can beat it in like 4 hours. And I love it. I've played it endlessly, but I want to talk about a game that is very unconventional and like not adherent to a lot of the tenets of Nintendo's typical game design, but has a level of polish and just individuality that I have just never really fully seen replicated. And I'd love to get to an excuse to talk about it in some capacity. So, what
What
a
a
wild
weird
ass
episode
episode
we
we're
have
about to
coming
go
up.
into. Yeah, what a whack ass episode we're about to walk into. Jesus Christ. And I thought Goosebumps and Max Landis was going to be chaotic. Fuck me.
I'm just still like I'm still like wrestling with the feeling that I recommended you something that you didn't like because I don't think that's ever happened.
I felt
Like
so
in
bad.
our years of friendship, we've always like just had this wavelength about each other.
Then
And this is really
again,
the first time that we've ever like put something in front of the other person that we were like,
I mean,
no.
the premise of this show is that we are such identical people that we can try and like gauge this very well. So no, like I totally like that's why I was so like, oh man, is this fucking but there is always the thing of like no matter how similar you are to your friends, like, you can pour through like I can pour through Morgan's letterboxd reviews and I can find one thing where I'm just like, "Hey, what the fuck is this shit?" And I'm sure we have
That's
those
me
with
for
each
you
other.
with that's me for you with Nightmare on Elm Street, honestly. But
I mean,
we've
Nightmare on
talked
Elm
that to death
Street,
in person, right? Our
Tenet's
issues.
another one.
Yeah.
Fucking. Do you like Miami Vice? That might be one too.
No, no.
Oh,
I
thank
don't like
God! Ha
I
ha!
don't like
Fuck
Miami
you, people
Vice.
who like Miami Vice.
Fuck you, Brandon. No, I'm just kidding, Brandon. You're great. I love you.
Dude, like that's the bad thing is that like fucking everybody from the film Twitter days loves Miami Vice. It's like fucking everybody, and I'm just like, what? And I'm just like, I like Heat. Can you leave me alone? I like Collateral. Leave me alone.
I like every other Michael Mann movie I've seen. Can I just have one
Literally.
that I take umbrage with, please?
Yeah, I know, right? Fucking, I got Heat 2 on my desk over there. I should read that.
Next time on Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, do the mean girls in Luigi's Mansion look like people? The boys will find out.
That was
Set them
good.
up and knock them down. Set them up,
Fucking Babe
knock them
Ruth
down.
pointing it out of the stadium saying, "What, bitch?"
Got bet, got better pitches than Max Landis too.
I'm so glad I didn't hit that I didn't hit stop recording before he said that. That's
We're recording this on the birthday of friend of the show, Jacob. So, Jacob, when you see this, happy birthday, buddy.
happy birthday.